I'm going to formally do what I was not able to do at your first meeting virtually, which is to thank you all first off for being involved, for participating. We had a board meeting which went late and couldn't step out of it, but I want to really thank you all really for your involvement. Our new, if you will, virtual task force is, I think, one of the fun-filled parts of our year 2020 is trying to all learn new skills and new techniques, but also try to connect that to a community engagement process, which is maybe the most difficult part of what we do. We're connected with each other, but we don't always connect in a broad way with the community. And this is our chance to do that. So thank you all very much for the challenges and delays and the difficulties, but thank you most of all for connecting and being patient and helping us through this process to get the SSPA meetings going. As everybody here knows, our district continues to evolve with the revitalization on Richmond Highway. The SSPA process is a key part of that. We did some earlier work with Embark, but we know there's additional things, including the redevelopment of the highway itself, the former Lorton prison properties, the commitment to affordable housing, the environmental issues that we've got that are big and serious, that go even way beyond Richmond Highway Route 1. The Fort Belvoir changes that are huge there, the 150 different departments. I was there earlier today for the change of command. We now have a new leader, and it's that in and of itself is a 2-year process that we have to kind of work with them and to educate folks. And but this is so Commander Josh Seagraves is the new commander, effective formally today. He actually lives in our community. He lives over off of Fort Hunt Road, so he's lived here a fairly long time, off and on. So he also knows our community, and I think will be a great partner with us on the highway, as well as in the district overall. Colonel Greenberg was a huge partner, really connected, and I know worked with all of us, and he'll be missed, but he'll still be living in the community, so he'll be with us as well. We've been doing some other things to try to bring more Fort Belvoir with us, and in turn connect more with Fort Belvoir. So we have a Fort Belvoir liaison, which I've established through the county process, and we'll be hearing a lot more about that as we go along. So the important part of the SSPA process, and I'm talking to our two folks who really live and breathe on the Planning Commission, live and breathe community engagement and development. And so we are all here because this is a true community process, and making sure that our plans, our comprehensive plan, reflects our values, reflects things that are important to us, and their leadership in the SSPA process is key to having it ultimately reflect our community and its values. I realize this is in essence the first part of that process, but it's also one where we get to kind of find out more broadly what's going on, as well as we start to hear from folks about their concerns or questions they have about what we're doing. So we all welcome and look forward to the many voices that we'll hear as part of this process. And we know that your work today with the SSPA process, only what the Planning Commission will receive as part of this process, all what the Board of Supervisors gets as part of this process, really just gets us through the first step. And then if there's additional steps, that will be seen as part of how we each of these steps, SSPA, Planning Commission, Board of Supervisors, engages and decides this process. So we have a long way to go. I'm stating the obvious, but I'm going to keep stating that because I know there's a lot of folks out there that maybe don't quite believe that. But those of us who live and breathe and work with the county know that I don't think there's anything that we do quickly, particularly when it comes to public engagement. And we've got a long road ahead of us. But I'm very appreciative of the leadership that Walter and Tim are involved with here, and the community as well, and look forward to the products that you produce, and in turn looking at those as we go forward in this process. So thank you all very, very much for your time, dedication, and the members of the committee for the time and their dedication.
Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor Stork. Great. Good evening, everybody. And we want to thank Supervisor Stork for his leadership in convening this body together. We do apologize for my lack of technical knowledge and technical difficulty that we had here, but we made it. So we're going to keep moving forward. And if you would bear with me to read this declaration as to why we're here, to conduct this meeting wholly electronically and to effectuate both the emergency procedures authorized by FOIA and the emergency ordinance. The Mount Vernon District SSPA Task Force need to make certain findings and determinations for the record. It's a bit cumbersome, so I ask that you advance for your patience. First, because each member of the task force is participating in this meeting from separate locations, we must verify that a quorum of members participating and each member's voice is clear, audible, and at appropriate volume for all other members. Accordingly, I am going to conduct a roll call and ask each task force member participating in this meeting to state your name and location from which you are participating. I ask that each of you pay close attention to ensure that you can hear each of your colleagues. Following this roll call, we will vote and establish the very member that can hear every other member. So the roll call. Commissioner Tim Sargent. Present. Hillary Cross.
Hillary Clarkson from Lorton, Virginia.
Catherine Ward. Catherine Ward.
Present at my home on Gladstone Place.
Gretchen Waltz.
Present at our home at New Market Road.
David Levine.
Present in Alexandria, Virginia.
Holly Doherty.
Hi, Walter, here, and I'm at the Mount Vernon Lee Chamber of Commerce office.
All right. Evan Kaufman.
Yeah, this is Evan Kaufman in Alexandria, Virginia.
Mary Payne.
This is Mary. I'm at Bucknell, Mount Vernon.
Queenie Cox.
Queenie Cox, Gum Springs, Virginia.
Ellen Young.
Ellen Young, present in Bellevue and Alexandria.
Hamid Munir.
Hamid Munir, Alexandria, Virginia.
Lynn Pasco.
Lynn Pasco, Montebello, home.
Tracy Wood.
Tracy Wood, Alexandria, Virginia.
And Commissioner Walter Clark, Mount Vernon District Supervisor's Office. And with that, I'd like to pass the virtual gavel over to our co-chairman as I move this motion forward. I move that each member's voice may be adequately heard and each other member of the Mount Vernon District SSPA Task Force.
The motion has been made. Do I have a second?
Second, Gretchen.
By Gretchen Walsh. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes.
Second, having established that each member's voice may be heard and every other member, we must next establish the nature of the emergency that compels the emergency procedures, and in fact, that we are meeting electronically. What type of electronic communication is being used and how we have arranged for public access to this meeting. Therefore, I move that the state of emergency caused by COVID-19 pandemic makes it unsafe for the task force to physically assemble and unsafe for the public to physically attend any such meeting, and that as such FOIA procedures, which requires the physical assembly of the task force and physical presence of the public, cannot be implemented safely or practically. I further move that the task force may conduct the meeting electronically through the dedicated video and audio conferencing line, and that the public may access this meeting by registering through the meeting link on the task on the track and nomination page of the SSPA website at www.fairfaxcounty.gov/planning-development/SSPA/south/track-nomination, or by calling 1-408-418-9388 TTY 711 and entering access code 129-486-0494. It is so moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I second that. Ahmed Munir.
Okay, we have a second on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion has passed.
Finally, it is next required that all of the matters addressed on today's agenda must be addressed the emergency itself and necessary to continuity in Fairfax County government and or statutorily required or necessary to continue operations and discharge of the Mount Vernon District SSPA Task Force lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities. It is so moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second. This is Ellen.
Okay, seconded by Ellen. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? No opposed. The motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chairman. So there were, moving on to our agenda, I would like to note that we have some written comments from the public, which will be entered into the record and later discussed as we do preliminary votes this evening. And with that, we will move into the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, this is Catherine. May I ask you to ask everybody that if you're not speaking, when you're not speaking, please mute yourself. There's lots of background noise going on.
Yes, thank you, Catherine. And you've heard what Catherine has asked each of us to do to make sure we unmute when we're not speaking. Thank you for following those rules. We would kick this off. I believe we had a couple of administrative items. Mr. Co-Chairman, we didn't need to go through the rules, and so we're fine with that.
I think we're fine.
Okay, fine there. And if we can move forward, Mary Payton had sent an email earlier regarding the nominations that we heard at our last meeting. And I want to give the floor to Mary to state what her comments were in the email so we can have a brief discussion on that now. We can kind of clarify things and make sure that there's clarity on.
Walter?
Yes.
This is Aaron Clybanner. Actually, we would like to reply to Mary's comments during the presentation for the Ingleside nomination, because we did some research and gathered a bunch of information that will answer her questions. Is that acceptable?
Sure, that's acceptable to me. Yes, sir.
I have a question. It wasn't, all my questions weren't related to the Ingleside. And also, I just have a text that there's some residents from Ingleside trying to get on. Are they visible to you, Aaron?
So, Mary, this is Graham. If
Graham.
they're attempting to get into the meeting, they can do so by going on the track and nomination page. They'll find the Mountain Task Force table, and that'll show them the Webex attendee link. So they can just click on that link, and that'll help them get into the meeting.
Okay, I think they did that. Do you have Leigh Tenario? Are they showing up?
Yeah, I do see her.
Okay.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
No problem.
Okay.
Do you want to consider my comments that were not related to Ingleside under that item as well?
We'll talk about those in a minute. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So Aaron, I will turn over to you now.
Thank you. So I will now just briefly go through the Webex instructions again for everyone. The first thing is if you move your cursor down to the bottom middle part of your screen, you'll see a number of icons. And the first one on the far left is the mute button, which turns your microphone on and off. And you have a similar one right next to that with the camera that allows you to turn that on and off. When those are red, they're off. When they're gray, they're on. The next button over is the person button with the 3 bars. That is the participants button. And this shows you the list of participants. And at the bottom right hand part of this window, you'll see the raise hand function. So we ask people, if you have a question you want to ask, hit that button so that we know you want to ask. And then the host of the meeting will unmute your microphone. And for members of the public that are attending, the raise hand function is the same. And again, hit that button. We will unmute your microphone, and you'll hear a series of beeps, and that will tell you that you're unmuted. That you can then ask your question or give your comment. And then once you're done, please lower the hand. So click it again so that you lower your hand. Otherwise, your microphone will still be on, and they'll all be able to hear you, and there'll be feedback. And if you're calling in to the meeting, the way you raise your hand is you hit *3 on your dial pad, and you'll hear the same series of beeps once you're in, unmuted. Okay. So the 2 things that I wanted to mention that are other administrative items. First of all, I just wanted to remind everyone, and I apologize because we probably didn't do as good a job as we should have in making this clear about the public meeting procedures and the task force procedures. So you might remember that we mentioned that task force members should not, 2 or more task force members should not meet to discuss task force business outside of the task force meetings. That's in person. But what I think we neglected to mention is that there should also not be emails between task force members on task force business. So all task force business needs to be conducted at the meetings. So if you have an issue that you want to bring up, to bring to the attention of the task force, please bring those up at meetings. And some of you did that today, and that was great. The second question I believe that we received, and I think this is from you, Mary, was can task force members make motions to change the staff recommendations that we give in the staff reports? And so you can make motions to recommend that staff change our recommendation between the time of the preliminary staff report and when we prepare our final staff reports before the Planning Commission hearings. So that's how that works. But ultimately, I mean, the task force makes their own recommendation and staff makes a separate recommendation. Okay, that's it for the administrative items.
All right, thank you, Aaron.
Aaron, can I ask a clarifying question with regards to your last comment?
Sure.
Okay. We, as a collective whole, made a recommendation last time about the property that Verizon owns, where we disagreed generally with the staff's preliminary report. Yes. About having comments about it only being affordable housing. And as a collective group, I believe we agreed that that should become parts of proffers and worked out with the community at large and not the staff just making decisions. So is that the sort of thing that you guys are actually going to listen to? because there may be some of those recommendations on other nominations where we might, as a whole or a majority, disagree with county staff's preliminary recommendations. So what are you going to do with our information is what I'm asking.
We may or we may not. I don't have an answer for you right now about that. But again, it's totally fine if the task force's recommendation is different from ours.
Catherine, this is Graham. One thing I wanted to mention is that both the task force vote, the final vote of the task force, and staff's recommendations will both be forwarded to the Planning Commission. And if there's a difference in terms of our recommendations, maybe depending on the, I don't want to say the severity, but the content, the staff that we forward to the Planning Commission will most likely describe the difference and the reasons why we had different recommendations. So that won't get, the idea being that if there is a difference, it won't get lost in terms of how it gets transmitted to the Planning Commission.
All right, thank you.
Okay. So should we move right into the agenda and keep this meeting moving?
Yes, please. Okay, I've been trying to raise my hand, but it doesn't seem to be working. Can I ask a question?
Yes, you may, ma'am.
Okay. So I believe the motion we made last week was to change the staff report to take out, I didn't vote for this, the motion that y'all made was to change the staff report to take out the part about this being a good spot to pursue workforce for affordable housing. So you're saying that that wouldn't necessarily alter the staff report, but it would go alongside our vote to continue the planning process.
Mary, that's correct. And that was a preliminary vote that was taken, but our understanding of the vote was that that was the task force's recommendation. So with the final vote that's scheduled in September, we can make sure that that distinction is clear so that the intent of having the task force have a separate set of considerations.
Okay. And will you record on that kind of a motion? That was unanimous, as I recall.
Right. So Tracy, as the secretary, will record the votes to ensure that we have the proper count.
Hello, this is David. May I say something here? Mr. Chairman, may I say something here? This is David.
I'm sorry, I was muted, David. Sorry.
Oh, okay. I had actually, and I'm glad we're talking about the vote on 2806 Popkins Lane from last week, because I feel that I didn't have enough information when considering that amendment and striking that language. The language actually says a significant percentage of affordable and workforce housing. It's not 100% affordable and workforce housing. And I feel that we just did not have enough information regarding the consequences of that, of making that language change or recommending it, as I understand. And I feel like I would ask that we reconsider that vote and have a fuller vetting and discussion about that, perhaps at the final meeting when we do the final vote. But I would ask that we reconsider that proposal that we made.
Yeah, so that is noted, David, and I'm of the opinion that we would take that up when we vote.
Okay.
And we properly vetted and all of our concerns are heard before we take that final vote. And as we move these meetings along now, we are giving a preliminary vote, if you will, if the nomination should it move forward, and should it then at that final vote, we take the final vote that it should move forward for staff to continue to work on, for it to be considered and to go forward before the planning commission and ultimately to the board of supervisors.
Okay.
So
Mr. Chairman, we will have time at that final vote to discuss it one more time.
that is correct. So
Okay. Okay.
have your donuts and coffee ready.
Okay, thank you. That's all I'd want, is that we have another chance to discuss it.
And David, we can provide additional information on the ADU and WDU questions that you had raised. If there are similar requests regarding the votes, just what I would ask, and this is great that you're bringing it up now. Just if you can provide us with as much time as possible ahead of that September vote so that we can do the research. We're here to support the task force and do these kinds of things. So just the lead time we get, our value add can be. So I might want to press. So thank you for that.
Okay. Well, thank you, Graham, for that too.
I just want to make sure that I'm clear because I'm recording just the recommendation screenings that take place, the votes for those for the different properties. And so, but Tim or Walter will actually call those votes, correct? The number like unanimous or so forth and so on. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Great, thank you.
I don't believe we took a roll call on the amendment, but we will do it at the final one, I hope. My third point had to do with that final meeting, not with Ingleside. Should we discuss that now?
Ingleside, were we going to hear?
No, I said my third point did not have to do with Ingleside, but rather with the final meeting and the discussion. My third point was that I was concerned that having the Bellevue Shopping Center presentation for the first time at that meeting, and then going into the final vote at the same meeting, plus rediscussing all the other, or making our final votes on all the other projects might be too long, that we might want to consider adding a meeting or I don't know what, but I'm concerned about two things. One is the length of time to hear the Bellevue presentation, which is our biggest one really, and also to redo all the final votes. And the second thing is the issue of hearing that presentation on Bellevue and then having to make a final vote on it the same night, say within the hour. Seems more rushed than I even thought it was before.
Right. Good point, Mary. Very good point. And as we go along, we hope that some of these nominations, we have heard two of them may take longer to discuss at the final vote. Hopefully some of the other nominations that we hear will not require a lot of revisiting, but we just don't know until once we hear the nominations and see how the groups feel. But we're going to have to consider all of that when the night of the final vote, at that final meeting. It will be a long night.
And the second point on doing the preliminary and final vote on the same night, is everyone comfortable with that?
Yeah, it's a matter of getting a dose of what the planning commissioners go through from time to time. So we all get to enjoy it.
Well, I'm very comfortable with it because I'm used to doing that with the planning commission, so.
Thank you, Catherine.
We think.
Yeah, but we're definitely mindful of all the comments, and when the task force was coming together, and as Commissioner Sargent and I met with staff, time and the amount of time that we spend and the number of meetings that we have, that was discussed at great length, and it is of concern and on the top of everyone's mind and agenda. So we don't plan to shortchange this at all.
And one thing I would just add to that is that we do have on the staff end of things that week of the September final vote. That's about as late as we can get in terms of holding SSPA meetings and still hitting the December time for the Planning Commission. So just wanted to mention that we do have some internal constraints that we're trying to adhere to. And that's why that final vote meeting was scheduled on that particular day. So just wanted to bring that up.
Okay. So now that we've got those administrative things addressed, we can move into tonight's meeting and the nominations that we have presented, that will be presented tonight. I'll turn it over to Commissioner Sargent.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chairman, and I am just checking with staff on one particular nomination for tonight, and that's the Parker. Could I get the number from you again for that one? The ID number for that, and I'll read them all.
It's PC 19-MV-11.
-11. Okay, that's all right. What I will do is read through the nominations we are looking at this evening, and then we can begin with the first one. Tonight's review of nominations include the following: Huntington Metro, PC 19-MV-005, and then the Parker, which is PC 19-MV-11. Third is Ingleside Trailer Park, PC 19-MV-002. And final is Beacon Hill Apartments in the Liga District, PC 19-LE-001. The first case application nomination this evening is Huntington Metro, PC 19-MV-005. Can we have a staff report, please?
We do. 1 second. I'm going to pull this up. All right. Can everybody see the presentation that I have pulled up?
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. So again, my name is Graham Owen with the Department of Planning and Development. So I'll be reviewing with you all three of the nominations that we have on the docket for this evening. The first one is site-specific plan amendment nomination PC 19-MV-5, which concerns the Huntington Metro Rail Station located on Huntington Avenue and North Kings Highway in the northern portion of the Mount Vernon Supervisor District. So the subject include the Huntington Metro Rail Station and a planned bus rapid transit station, along with associated surface and structured parking and vacant land immediately surrounding the station, located east of North Kings Highway and south of Huntington Avenue. The Huntington Metro Station is the focal point of the Huntington Transit Station Area, or TSA, which is one of several mixed-use centers surrounding the 14 metro stations that are located in Fairfax. The TSA boundaries are shown here at the top of the screen and along Telegraph Road in black outline. The station is also the center of the Huntington Transit Development Area, or TDA, which is an area that's been determined in the plan to be appropriate for higher intensity mixed-use development. And the TDA boundaries are shown here in the white dash. The areas to the south are developed with multifamily residential units under this development plan, the TDA, and areas to the west across North Kings Highway and to the east are developed with detached and attached homes. The shopping center to the southwest is planned for transit-oriented mixed-use development up to 2.15 floor area ratio, or FAR. And the adjacent Huntington Club condominiums to the northwest is planned for transit-oriented mixed-use redevelopment up to a 3.5 FAR. So the site consists of 2 parcels located in Land Unit E in the Huntington Community Planning sector. And the current comprehensive plan recommends public facilities on the Huntington metro area, which is parcel 17E, the northern parcel, noting that air rights over the metro station have a long-term development potential. On parcel 88D, the plan recommends a mix of uses consisting of office, residential, retail, and hotel. And it's planned in conjunction with development recommendation for areas abutting the site to the south in Land Unit F. In total, E and F contain a total development potential of 250,000 square feet of office, 30,000 square feet of retail use, 600 residential units, and an option for either a 200-room hotel or an additional 250 residential units. This being a potential total of 850 units across the two land units. So it's important to note that of these 850 units, 469 have been constructed with the courts at Huntington Station and the townhouses that are immediately south of there. And the remaining are unbuilt, but have received zoning approval in developments to the south of the station. So the nomination proposes to amend the plan for the subject parcels to recommend public facilities on the station and parking with no particular FAR assigned to those uses, and then a maximum of 1.5 FAR or 1.8 million square feet of development. So these uses consist of approximately 360,000 square feet of office and retail use, and a maximum of 1.5 million square feet of residential use. So this maximum would consist of 1,400 to 1,500 net new units over the current plan, for a total of 2,250 to 2,350 units when considered with 850 units in the current plan for land units E and F. So uses would be provided in low, mid, and high-rise building types between 55 and 200 feet in total. So the comprehensive plan recommendations for the Huntington TSA are based on the concept of concentrating redevelopment to a limited area, which is the TDA, that white dashed area that I had shown previously. And that's within a 5 to 7 minute walk of the Metro Rail station. The TDA is considered the most proximate area to the Metro station and offers the most viable opportunities for development and redevelopment. It's also therefore recommended for the highest densities and intensities of mixed use development in order to optimize transit ridership. The county's guidelines for transit-oriented development in the policy plan endorse higher intensities close to rail stations generally, and where feasible above rail stations in order to help meet county goals related to production of affordable housing, employment opportunities, and also provide opportunities for urban streetscape and design and connectivity, as well as providing transportation alternatives to single occupancy vehicles. Both the Huntington plan that's adopted now and the TOD guidelines in the policy plan recommend that development projects within the TSA provide a balanced mix of uses in order to encourage a critical mass of pedestrian activity, accommodate future residential and employment growth, and to mitigate vehicular traffic by encouraging off-peak and reverse commuting patterns. So MV005 is recommended to be added to the Comprehensive Plan Amendment Work Program. The nomination aligns in concept with the principles of higher intensity mixed-use development in proximity to transit, and staff believes warrants further study. In particular, we think that it should be evaluated relative to the Huntington TSA, and as well as countywide goals, such as transit-oriented development, TOD, as mentioned, affordable housing, and the ability to successfully mitigate transportation impacts. So with that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take questions, but I believe the nominator also has a presentation that they'd like to provide to you as well.
Can we hear? Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Can we hear from the nominator?
Sure. Mark, can you hear us? Mark Vianney?
Hold on.
Mm-hmm.
Wait 1 second. There. Keeps telling me it's unmuting me, but it wasn't unmuting me. All right. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate everybody taking the time tonight. And I also want to thank staff for their work on this, and particularly thank Graham for the hour or so he spent this earlier today trying to help me get the technical aspects working, which I almost had, except for trying to figure out how to use the unmute button. Thanks very much. I'm Mark Vianney, and with me is my colleague Tim Dugan on behalf of Bean Kinney, who are the attorneys on this. We also have Neil Teague and Carter Clark with Stout and Teague, who are the contractors for WMATA on this redevelopment. They've also, Neil's been, Stout and Teague was the original developer of the WMATA metro station back in the 2000 rezoning. And then we also have Steve Segerland or Roz Doggett with WMATA on here as well. Graham, are we able to pull that? Okay, great. Yeah. All right, so again, this is kind of many of you will have seen this presentation before because we've gone ahead and done a lot of outreach to various community groups already. So this is going to be basically the same thing, but this kind of gives a little bit of context. We agree with and support staff's very well done report, which kind of gets you the background planning ideas of what's out there and what we're trying to do. But let me kind of walk through it, kind of what it looks like in a little more practical terms. Can you go to the next slide? We go to the next slide.
Mark, is this the right one? It says user experience on it.
Mine's showing the cover sheet for Huntington Metro. Still. On my screen.
So this is one that's red outline.
We'll go. Yeah, right now it says background. We'll go there then. All right, so we're gonna start off by talking a little bit of the background, then we'll talk about the concepts, and then we'll talk a little bit about the timeline and give a brief overview of kind of the community outreach and next steps if this is proposed. All right. All right, this is the site that we're talking about here, and everybody's pretty much familiar with it. This is just the metro station itself, and really it has three components to it. You've got what we call the northern. Oh, back again. All right. Well, there's the northern area, which is the parking lot immediately north of the metro station, between the metro station and Huntington Avenue. Then you've got the middle, which is the medium parking garage that was built back in 2008. Then you got the south, which is the southern parking garage, and that's the one right now that's closed. All right, and that is not going to be reconstructed, but it may be replaced eventually at some point. As part of this process, we're trying to figure out how to do that in conjunction with ultimately what will be the BRT station as well. So that's what we've got there. And then we're talking about the western parcel. That's the kind of the area that's kind of the wooded area, kind of adjacent to where the Huntington Club condos are, and between the Huntington Club condos and where the metro station itself it is too. All right, can we go to the next slide? All right. So talking about the user experience here, this property basically goes from north to south, drops 135 feet. And as we talked about, it has three different main components. We have the southern parking garage, which is closed, but pedestrians are still able to access if you're coming from Jefferson Manor or you're coming from along North Kings Highway. You can access through there to get to the metro and then take the escalators down. If you take Metro Access Drive and you drive through the site and you go down to the middle parking garage, you can park in the middle parking garage and also walk through there and come a little bit to the north and come back through the bottom of the southern parking garage and access the metro station there. Or you can go over to the northern parking lot if you want to go that way. And then the northern parking lot, which is the oldest functional parking lot, that's about 1990. It's about 30 years old at this point. And that's kind of the big one there. The middle parking garage is about 12 years old, about 2008. And those are the two parking garages we have. Then you can have pedestrian access into the bottom of the metro station. You have from both sides, you have active bus loops, both on the north side and the south side that are operated. Then you have vehicular access coming in both from the north and the south side. As I said, the southern parking garage is no longer open, but from the south, you can still access the central parking garage. And from the north, you can access the central parking garage and the northern parking garage. All right. And you can, if you're looking down the bottom there, you can see it kind of in context. If you're looking at how it kind of operates as it kind of steps down that 135-foot drop. All right. Can we go to the next slide, please? All right. So, as everybody, I think this isn't news to anybody. This is an important station. And the importance of the station is only going to increase over time as the embark process kind of unfolds. And we were lucky enough to have some major things happening right next to us. We've got the Amazon at National Landing, the Virginia Tech campus, the continued build out of Alexandria. But as things proceed south, and we've got this another kind of barbell that is of new development, coming from Fort Belvoir, and then along the Embark Richmond Highway project. This is going to be the first of what is hopefully more than two future metro stations, but at least two more metro stations going down to at least High Valley. And it certainly is the cap right now for the immediate future of where the BRT is going to connect in with the Huntington Metro and provide that kind of transit connection. So we go to the next slide. this is putting, again, this is kind of in context. We already talked about, what we have in terms of the parcels. The two areas we're primarily looking at redevelopment would be the north and south precinct, we'll call it, and the western parcel. We are surrounded by, existing development and properties that are going to be going through significant redevelopment. To the north of us, we have the Parker and we have the Midtown. To the immediate west of us, we have the Huntington Club project, which is proposing some very significantly sized buildings. To the south of us, we have the future build out of the remainder of the Huntington Metro 2000 rezoning. And then kind of immediately to the east of us, we have the Huntington community, single family community. And then, within that, they also have the Arden site, which is the new Wesley housing project right on Huntington Metro itself. As Graham said, right now, this is part of this is mostly Land Bay E. But, the metro station itself involves Land Bay E and Land Bay F, and it's currently approved for about 800 units. All of that has been approved for zoning approval. About 470 of it's been built out. Another 370 has been approved, but will be built out in the next year or two when the Abington project comes forward. And what we're proposing to do here is, over the entirety of the site, look at a density of about 1.5 FAR. And a lot of things we were considering, and some of these things that came when we were meeting with the community associations as part of the Abington site, was the existing project had about 240,000 square feet of office approved, and it was approved really in the southern part of the property where people, as part of a 10 to 12 story building, which seemed really out of place at the time. There was also another 30,000 square feet of retail approved down there. That doesn't feel appropriate in these days and age. And that was also involving separate parking garages, and the way we just really don't develop land next to the metro. And it's a huge utilization. When you look through the lens of how the existing planning and zoning views it, it's really from almost a late 20th century view of how, it was basically just a place to park your car and go to work, catch the metro and go to work, and that was about it. So what we're proposing to do is, and we'll talk about this in some of the various options we've got. And again, these options themselves are just conversation starters. If we are approved for an SSPA, that's part of the beginning of just a very, very long process of replanning this whole site. But looking at proposing about 1,400 to 1,500 new residential units, that would include a healthy, affordable housing component. Looking at having about 360,000 square feet of office and non-residential retail. Probably most of that would be aggregated up to the northern end of the property. And doing that in a variety of buildings, from mid-rise, low-rise, and high-rise, ranging from 50 to about 200 feet in height. Trying to, as we'll talk about here, is trying to blend in with the scale of anticipated and approved development in the area to meet, the objectives we want to meet in terms of, TOD design and, making this a good modern transition area for the BRT and for adjacent communities as they develop, and providing them access to the metro. All right, next slide, please.
Mark, are you not seeing it?
I'm not seeing. I'm still seeing whereas the things that's proposed plan development. I think there might be a lag given the Webex. Just give it a second. I'm sure.
Just for you, the rest of us are seeing it.
Yeah, I'm sure I'm looking like like a little slow here today. Yeah, I'm still looking at the proposed plan amendment page, but I have a hard copy, so I'm just going to wing it from there and just kind of assume that I'm on the right page. So let's go into the next page, which would be basically titled "Justification for the Project to be Added to the Comprehensive Plan Work Amendment Program." And again, it's kind of the points we just talked about. Fulfilling the vision of this station as a transportation hub for Southeast Fairfax County, preparing and enhancing the transformative impact of BRT and Embark. This is kind of the open door for the beginning of where Embark begins and heads south. And responding to the planning for the adjacent sites, addressing the emerging needs of the community for housing at the transit site, creating a walkable live, work, play community. And that's part of this process too. We want to, when you talk about the center designs, we want to see, just as we did with the Abington, we want to be looking for ways to improve pedestrian connectivity to the surrounding communities. And so that'll be a big part of how we look at this. And then, again, since I said before, this property hasn't been replanted since the 2000s. It really is outdated. All right, going to the next slide, which should say concept. Let's skip past that, and we'll go to what should be the next slide. Where I'm seeing right now, it still shows the proposed plan amendment aerial photo. Should have 4 samples of this. All right, and these are.
I think everyone else is seeing the four.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm just looking for verification, so I'm not. At least I know I'm on the same page. All right, and these are the 4. Oh, there it is. It just showed up. And these are the 4 exact same things. We went to the Mount Vernon Council and we talked to them, and we've also met with the community associations. These are the same things we just presented to them last month or so, Mount Vernon Council. And these are just, again, these are notional concepts, us just kind of playing with some of the key requirements we know we're going to have, and just trying to figure out how they would work and kind of moving around both the south end and the north end. And as we looked at this, some of the other considerations we had were what was the appropriate size, scale, and height. So I'm looking at like option 1. We're looking at a large residential bay there. We're trying to limit density. I'm trying to limit height at the south end down to 5 to 9 stories mostly, possibly with some going up to 16 where they come next to the Huntington Club. But that's, you're seeing land bays there of about 5 to 9. Then there's a little island there, in which we'll probably end up being a park, as I think we anticipated in the Abington project, probably to replace the little isolated park area that's right on North Kings Highway right now, because we really do need that as a community open space and amenity. And that's right now, and this option would be for 2 stories. You look at the northern part of that, you're looking at various residential bays ranging from 4 stories, where it runs directly adjacent to the Huntington Community Association. So that's it. Those would be like tall townhouses or maybe 2/2s, but that's all you did. And you'll see that little block down there, that's the little narrow block at the south, I guess it would be really at the bottom of the page in each 4 of the options. That stays the same, but then we have residential bays here going between 5 to 15 and up to 18 stories as you get up to Huntington Metro. And then you see where that little gray block is, kind of mid block there. That's a notional, maybe new parking garage. Somewhere right about there also would be the BRT station. We anticipate the BRT station is going to be kind of coming off North Kings Highway and going into kind of where we have the median break between. I've got Capital Investment Advisors between where we've got the residential bay and where we've got Huntington Club condominiums. And you'll see that that's a constant within all these development proposals. Again, option 2, kind of the same thing. We've now moved the another residential bay 16 stories up, so it's up against to the Huntington Club condominiums. Kept the existing the new residential bay proposed along North Kings Highway, again right about 5 to 9, and we've taken that little park area between Abington and then made that a park again. And then where we have the BRT station, we've got it going there underground, and you've got like a little park above it. Option 3, again, still continuing to play with this. This is more of an at-grade BRT station. You've got the parking garage right there. You've got a residential bay, and you've got an at-grade BRT station there. To the north end, you're again still at 4 stories running up against near Huntington Community Association, but 17 to 16 stories residential towards the top, towards the when you get toward the Huntington Metro. And that would match what you have, across the street, with the Metropolitan, which is 15 stories. Again, you see it kind of over and over again, different options. And here, what we're playing with these blocks is trying to make them more livable, more not mega blocks, but larger blocks that are, provide a little better transportation impact and flow between each of the properties. That's what we're doing again here on option 4. And then we get to option, we get up to the northern end of that. Again, the metro station, same. Townhouse bay or whatever it be, directly against Huntington Community, and then 18-story residential right up against the metro station. And some of that would also be, possibly where we put the office. And we think it's increasingly likely we'll put the office and the non-residential, where if it goes there, it'll be in the northern half of this. Going to the next slide, circulation and parking. This is kind of a blow up of really what is, very close to, option 4. And then, we're looking at the connectivity levels, we have pedestrian routes. We know with the Abington thing, we had the Eastern Promenade, and providing better connectivity between the apartments to the south, the Montebello folks, and the kind of indirect access up the stairs and onto the Eastern Promenade from Huntington Community Association, and then providing better pedestrian connectivity for the folks coming from that south through the site as well, down Metro Access Drive, better vehicular connectivity, through the site, from North Kings Highway. If you look mid-block, one of the things we're considering is a direct access point, maybe by a land bridge or something like that, over to where the Huntington Club Community Association is redeveloping their project at some point. And then we get to the south again, paying attention to where we have major points of vehicular access, and trying to provide, improved vehicular access. Right now, we've got that one kind of major hub right to in curb cut as you get towards the eastern edge of where the parking garages are. Maybe breaking that up, providing a different point of access there as well. Recognizing that the existing bus stop and circle there is probably going to just remain in place the way it is. But taking advantage of those opportunities there. All right, next slide. Open space. We're again, this is the beginning of a long conversation about a lot of different things. Some of this land is just by virtue of the grade changes and by virtue of the topographical conditions, and is going to just remain unbuilt and preserved, and we like that. We think that's a good opportunity to kind of provide open space and breathable land for the development. But part of this is also going to be talking about putting open spaces strategically in the built environment, and maybe learning from some of the mistakes of the past. When we look at the 2000 rezoning, as I previously noted, you had that open space directly adjacent to where the North Kings Highway is, and through so many meetings we've had with the community, no one knows anybody who uses that, feels comfortable letting their kids go there or letting their dog run around there, because it's a little less than a quarter of an acre. It's got vehicles on 4 different sides, particularly on North Kings Highway, and looking for something that may be a little bigger, a little less next to high traffic, and a little more surrounded by residential. So these are some of the ideas we've come up with right here. You can see them kind of a little green highlighted there. But again, these are just kind of conversation starters, but we're trying to look for strategic locations that we can kind of start building in open space into the built environment, as opposed to just relying on what we're going to keep as part of the natural environment. Next slide. Assuming the next slides come there, you should be looking at a 3D imagery, and this is the first one is kind of looking east, or kind of northeast really. If you're kind of flying above Jefferson Manor and looking across North Kings Highway, and again, we're trying to, if you take a look at this, we're trying to match and make ourselves compatible with the adjacent properties as we step ourselves up. So we're, you have the houses at Jefferson Manor there, and then you got this highway across the, North Kings Highway there, and we're stepping up between 5 to 9 stories, which we feels appropriate for that level, right along North Kings Highway. And then you get a little further deeper into the site, and that's also compatible with what you've got, when you get a little further south and a little deeper in. The Abington project is going to be between 7 and 8 stories. You get yourself a little further in there, and we're looking at opportunities to go a little higher, maybe matching, or probably not matching, but coming close to what's being proposed right now for the Huntington Club, and kind of taking advantage of that density. But that's also the sites that are directly adjacent to the metro, which is kind of consistent with what I think everybody wants to see, is trying to maximize that density to the metro, reduce trips, make things more efficient as possible. And then, looking further in there, and we'll flip around to it, but you can see that little, the blue block, that's our notional office block. And then, over, and that, as you get to Huntington Metro, and then, next to the office block is another notional residential block. And then you can see by contrast, and we'll flip to the next slide, actually, is probably the best way to illustrate it. And I'm assuming it's flipped, and you should see another kind of reverse of that on 3D imagery, where we've got, the Huntington Club, and the kind of looming over on the far right hand of the screen. You've got, I talked about beforehand, we've got our blue building, which is kind of our notional non-residential office building there. We've got, the potential for residential, 18 stories, kind of matching. Remember, the Parker is, I think they're about 15 stories or so. You've got the Meridian, Midtown is about 15 stories. But the stepping down, then you get looking at doing development, probably about townhouses or maybe 2 over 2s, as we get closer to the single family community that is the Huntington Club, Huntington Community Association, immediately to our east. And so that is, again, this is the very first kind of conversation starters for density studies of how to take this kind of density and correctly apply it there, being respectful of adjacent properties, trying to be as compatible as we can, at the same time meeting the very complex and competing sometimes needs of density and use mix and the like. Going to the next page, timeline. Just and again, this is for those of you who've been in Mount Vernon Council, you've seen this before. If this SSPA were to be approved, this is kind of a notional timeline. We think that the SSPA probably runs to the end of 2020, 2021. If we're at a point where that starts becoming a little more certain, we likely would then maybe look to developers to start looking at sites, probably with the south part of the station first. And we can imagine that would take a process probably from 2021 to about 2025. In the middle of that process, we'd probably be looking at doing the studying for the replacing or improving the infrastructure for the metro station. Particularly where you got the south station coming down, and we're going to try to provide additional access points there. And so that would be a process that takes you probably about 2031 or so. And maybe by 2030 at the same time, you're probably going to have a ramping up of the north station development. So that's kind of, again, the future. No one can predict the future. Anybody predicted where we'd be right now is in 2020. But that's how we see it generally folding out. The last slide should kind of just talk about community outreach and next steps. We've done a lot of community outreach already, and we're planning to continue to do that. Through January and March of this year, we've met with all the adjacent community associations. We've had meetings with them. We've had meetings with the Mount Vernon Council. We've also had meetings with staff level, and we've done multiple meetings, including what coming up here with a big part of this is the coordination with the BRT. But then we've also had meetings with planning and zoning to make sure, particularly when the Abington project was coming in, that it would be something that didn't inhibit or create obstacles to redevelopment of this site, and that they would work together well. So we feel like we've done pretty good stops with that. The next steps really is just kind of continue to work with you folks, getting your feedback, and then kind of continuing the process. If you vote to allow us to move forward, which I hope you will, our pledge is to continue. I'm nothing if not all about meeting with the community associations. We really like to do that, and we've learned a lot of really good ideas. You learn a lot about problems too that you can solve as you move forward, and so that would be part of our process. There are just from those communities, we know there's going to be issues. Stormwater management, affordable housing, bird-friendly design, all kinds of things that we're going to try to need to address as we go forward. And some of that can be addressed as aspirationally in the comp plan amendment. Some of it will be addressed more specifically in resulting rezonings and projects that move forward. But it's good to get these things out now, and that's kind of our plan if you guys will move forward with a positive vote. But thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. We open it up now. I believe Co-Chairman has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chairman. Couple of questions, Mark, for me. One, you noted the word notional a few times, in relation to the traditional office building, the site, the blue building site, and others. How does one plan in this day and age, even during and post-pandemic, for what we consider office? Because that seems like a very large building, which who knows how office plays out, and I'm by no means any subject matter expert on this, but I'm wondering, because that could easily flip to residential if
well, I think that's why it became notional, a lot more notional than it was even 5 months ago. What I'm starting to see, I think obviously that's why you want to preserve necessary flexibility to provide the opportunity to respond to whatever the market's demanding. But at the same time, if you can keep a element of non-residential there as well, that helps the ultimate goals. Increasingly what I'm starting to see right now is people are seeing that eventually we will get past, COVID at some point in some form or fashion, but, office is going to remain, and office will remain largely in a kind of a large building format. It's more a question of what the interior of the building is going to look like. And, the interior of the building may not be as dense as it once was. The trend we've had is that greater and greater kind of smaller offices, more people packed in, and it may not be looking like that, but that's kind of, I think we'd be foolish to not include it at this point. And I know that's not what you're suggesting, but I also don't want to overprescribe and say, that there will be a need for that much at this time. There wasn't back in 2000. Our hope is to keep it there because we think that that's in keeping with the economic development goals and the planning goals, for the county. And all we can do is kind of hope for the best and, maintain the necessary flexibility to react in a way that makes sense when the time comes to allow these properties to move forward.
My one other question is more of an observation, and that's just the high density buildup over time and vis-a-vis the surrounding existing residential neighborhoods. I'm wondering about sound. I'm wondering about, I don't see cut through the same as we saw in other high density development plans, but I think sound and other abatement issues might be important there.
We agree. Okay. And I think that's why it's important to frankly talk to folks and get the feedback, and and frankly try to highlight as many of these issues as we can, recognizing that even the issues we highlight may not capture all the issues that are confronting communities when projects actually move forward, say in 5 to 8 years. And at that point, that's part of the rezoning process too.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, this is Catherine. I have a question, if I might.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Tim, I'm right on line with what you asked, but let me ask it a little more detailed, if I might. When you guys do your notionals, I'd highly recommend you show some sort of walking connectivity from the Huntington Avenue Street side up to the north end, particularly because you're recommending putting all the retail up on North Kings Highway when we have a lot of residential down on Huntington, and they should have the same opportunity to get to shops and things of that nature. The other thing is the live workspace. If we could put something like that in the plan language as an option, again, because we don't know what the world's going to look like in 5 or 6 years, about how people want to live and work. And that seems to be the latest trend, if you will. We just approved, the board just approved Skyline for a couple of million square feet of live workspaces. So those are the points I'd like to make.
Thank you. Good points.
Thanks, Catherine. Anyone else?
Oh, Mr. Chairman, this is David. If I could ask a couple questions.
Yes, sir.
So Mark, very good presentation and very, very thorough. And also congratulations to the staff. I think this is really very comprehensive. Couple of questions though. Was there any thought about building on top of the metro station? And so you could free up more open space there by putting one of the buildings on top of the metro station or undergrounding the station?
Yes, I mean, it may not be apparent from the illustrations because they're just kind of general massing diagrams. A significant portion of the building is actually kind of right underneath where the south parking garage is, and the operational building. Most customers see basically the platform area. The building actually the metro station goes a significant amount of land way into the side of the hill. And although you couldn't see it from the massing diagrams, and I don't know, Graham, if it's possible to maybe go back to one or maybe the looking northeast three-dimensional view. And just nod at me if you're on there because I'll never know.
So I'm looking at the one that's looking southwest right now.
Okay. Well, you would find, essentially what we're trying to do is part of the equation we're having here is kind of how do we fit the BRT station into this? We looked at it from both BRT station from saying kind of like you take the loop you've got right now and make it kind of a super loop at grade, or is that something that's going to be better suited if you take that loop right now and you kind of put it underground? You can see actually from what Graham's got right there, we've got the metro station there, and then we've kind of built the beginnings of the underground. You come there and it goes, and the BRT station goes underground, and then it kind of lays basically on top of and adjacent with that metro station. But that metro station, where you see, that kind of one layer with the dark windows there, That's our notional BRT station, where you have the buses coming in and turning around. But that's sitting all on top of basically what is, still a metro station as well. You've got maintenance, you've got all the support facilities there too. I mean, this is not. It is not just, I think most of us think in terms of metro stations purely as just the platform. There's the infrastructure, and I've heard various and sundry rumors about how far, because this is also an end line thing, where you have a thing where the line goes there and the trains go back there and they get stacked and then they come back. And eventually at some point, that will probably be the beginning of the new line go there. But there's significant infrastructure under the ground already.
Okay. Thanks for that. One other question I had is with particularly the blue office building on Huntington in that massing diagram, I'm just wondering, are you taking advantage of that grade differential where you're going up 135 feet?
Exactly.
So help me understand that. I mean, wouldn't you want not as high, the building's not as high on Huntington, a little bit lower, and then you have higher buildings up towards North King?
Actually, what we were doing was somewhat the reverse. We were taking advantage. The property drops from about 135 feet from where you got North Kings Highway area down there. So the goal was to take advantage of that drop, and as you kind of get that kind of almost reverse defilade, putting the building in there. And so therefore, we're frankly would be confronting existing buildings that are about the same height, roughly the same height. So it's not totally out of character. And then, where we've looked at, the south side, limiting the height mostly along the North Kings Highway site. So where we're just directly across from it. It's Lee District, but there are neighbors too. So you have a rise from there. Those are 2/2s and not 2/2s. They are duplexes primarily, but 2 and 3 story duplexes, and then kind of scaling up to about 5 to 9 stories, which you see right there. But then trying to provide for a little bit of high rise, where it makes sense. In this case, we felt that made the most sense, up against where Huntington Club's proposing their high rise. And so that's why you have that there.
Okay. Well, good. Well, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I also have a question. I'm sorry.
Mark, I have a question. Is the parking capacity the same in this design as the current capacity?
We're still looking at that right now. We have right now we're operating with 2 out of 3 parking garages, and it's not really that bad, frankly. And I don't know whether that's a reflection of changing habits and the like. But one of the things we go back and forth on is whether or not we're going to rebuild a 3rd parking garage or not. Recognize that we will need to have new parking to accommodate, the private development to begin with. But there are, if you look right here in this option right here that we're looking at, we're not building a new public replacing that south parking garage. We're just keeping the existing 2 parking garages that are there. But we are providing structured parking for the new development. But on other options, we have, we are looking at a 3rd parking garage. And again, that's part of, us taking it out to the community, because we get 2 different voices on that. You get one voice that say, reduce the parking, and, it'll be more efficient. People take the bus. Then you got folks that say, notwithstanding that, the area is going to densify, particularly if you have more development in this area. And as you go down for Embark, and even if you're keeping the same parking ratio with a much increased usage, you're still going to need a larger parking garage. And so that's why we have the option for the 3rd parking garage on a couple of our designs, which we proposed at various locations. You can see it in the presentation I had, but that's the kind of that gray blob. We've looked at like an 8-story parking garage, and there's some options, but there's flexibility for both ways.
Okay. Well, I'm going to strongly encourage you to make the pathways from the parking garages to the metro stations according to some kind of universal design, so that people with handicap strollers and can navigate it. Right now, it's difficult.
Yeah, that's actually a big, if we go back to the pedestrian, I don't have that much time. You want to listen to me talk all night.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's actually a big part of what we're trying to do. We see that's a huge obstacle we've got right now with the existing 2 parking garages, and we're trying to route people to the south parking garage, the remnants of the south parking garage where they can access down there. And then actually part of what we were talking about, possibly having a bridge to over to the hunting club as well. But I think those are all good points, Mary. Anything else? If not, that's all I have. I don't know if the WMATA team has anything they want to say. If not, you know, I know you've got other things to do tonight, and I won't take more of your time. I appreciate your thoughts.
Mark, I was just saying all these wonderful things about you, and we were on mute, so you didn't hear me.
Oh, okay.
So thank you very much for your presentation, and we really appreciate it. And the rest of the committee, very good questions. We're now entertaining the further discussions you want to have on this. If not, we can take a preliminary vote now and then move on to the next nomination.
Commissioner Clark, just wanted to mention if we wanted to have public comment, this might be a good time.
Okay, to do this. Okay. All right. Do you have any hands raised?
Not yet. So I just wanted to mention for folks that are attending the meeting that are in the public, if you want to comment on this nomination, you can do so by raising your hand. As I explained at the beginning of the meeting, what you'll want to do is click on the participants button. And then from there, go to the bottom right-hand corner of the list of participants, and you'll see a hand. And that will allow you to raise your hand in the meeting so that we know how to call on you. From your phone, hit *3, and that'll allow you to be noticed in the panel. And it doesn't look like anybody has any comments.
Okay. All right. Hearing none, we'll keep moving forward.
Is there a motion for a preliminary vote concerning this nomination?
Yes, this is Ellen. I move that we add PC 19-MV-005 to the work plan.
This is Gretchen, a second.
We have a motion and a second. Can we have a vote? All in favor? Or is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all in favor of the motion to add this to the work plan?
Aye.
Say aye.
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 Any opposition? Hearing done, this is a preliminary motion which passes, and we'll take a final vote at the end of the process, but thank you very much.
Thank you for your time, everybody.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, our next nomination this evening is PC 19-MV-11, the Parker. We have a presentation by staff and then comments by the nominator.
All right, so this is Graham Owen again. Can everybody see the presentation that I have up here for 2550 Huntington Avenue?
Yes, you can.
Okay, great. All right. So this is MV11, which concerns the property located at 2550 Huntington Avenue in the Huntington Community Development Sector, which again is in the northern portion of the district and located directly across Huntington Avenue from the previous nomination that we just reviewed. Here's an aerial photograph showing the site in particular. So the subject parcels include an existing multifamily residential development known as the Parker, and a temporary park space that's planned and approved for office and or hotel uses located on the north side of Huntington Avenue. The site is situated to the north of the Metro Rail station, as I mentioned, and the planned bus rapid transit station. Cameron Run and the city of Alexandria beyond that are abutting the site to the north. An office building abuts to the west, and the elevated yellow line Metro Rail station track abuts to the east across Metro View Parkway. So as I mentioned with the previous nomination, this site is located in the Huntington TSA, which is the outline shown in black. And it's also located within the Huntington TDA, which is where, once again, the plan has a recommendation for higher intensity mixed use development to support to support Metro Rail. So the site is located, as you can see in the map to the right, it's located in Lake Unit G of the Huntington Community Planning Sector. And the comprehensive plan recommendations for the Huntington TSA are based on the concept of concentrating new development and redevelopment to the limited area in the dashed out line, which is a 5-7-minute walk from the station. Once again, it's considered the most proximate area to the Metro Rail station, provides the best opportunities for development and redevelopment, and is appropriate for higher intensity mixed use development. So the county's guidelines also endorse highly closer rail stations to help meet county goals related to the production of affordable housing and employment opportunities, urban streetscape design and connectivity, and provision of alternatives to single occupancy vehicle travel. So the comprehensive plan has a site-specific recommendation for the site currently, and it calls for a mix of residential, office, and restaurant retail uses at an intensity of 2.0 to 3.0 FAR with a maximum height of 165 feet. The residential use component is limited to 1/2 of the total development. So, let me go back one, sorry. So the nomination proposes an option to remove the limitation on residential development and recommend up to 100% residential development. So this is replacing the planned office, non-residential use, hotel use that's in that area with the circle with the park that's planned there currently. The nomination notes the potential for senior housing or assisted living facilities and proposes to potentially develop in coordination with the office use that's immediately to the west on parcel 83-1-133, which is, as I mentioned, along Huntington Avenue immediately to the west. So in considering this nomination, staff notes that the adjacent Huntington Club condominiums property to the south was subject to a plan amendment fairly recently in 2017 that provided a transit-oriented mixed-use redevelopment option up to a 3.5 FAR. The office development to the west was subject to a plan amendment in 2017 as well that provided a mixed-use redevelopment option up to a 3.0 FAR. Both of these properties have frontage on Huntington Avenue, similar to the subject property, and the redevelopment options that were adopted in those two recent plan amendments included both residential and non-residential mixed use to support the critical mass of office use at the doorstep of Metro, noting that this is kind of one of the best places where we should be providing office to support mixed use development, support office uses, and to support reverse ridership on Metro. So given the MV11 is not recommended to be added to the comprehensive plan amendment work program. It would create the potential for a residential only use option or limited commercial uses on the subject parcel, which would be counter to the goal of providing a balanced mix of residential and non-residential uses with development projects in the Huntington TSA. So accordingly, staff believes that the adopted plan recommendation, which has a mixed use redevelopment option on it currently, so that concludes my presentation, and I believe that the nominator has one as well.
All right. Thank you very much. So do we have the nominators report? Is our nominator available for presentation?
I'm sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you. I apologize. This is Lynn Strobel with the law firm of Walsh Colucci, and I represent the nominator, Capital Investment Advisors, who is also the owner of 2550 Huntington Avenue. And I want to say that we really appreciate your time this evening to share this proposal with you. If we go to the first slide. The nomination property, as was identified to you, is located on the north side of Huntington Avenue. It's kind of across the street from the nomination that you were just discussing and across from the Huntington Club. It is outlined there in black, and it's a little difficult to see, But as you saw, the Parker Apartments are developed on one parcel. There are two parcels along the front, parcels 34E and 34F, and those are owned by the nominator. So the next slide. I thought it would be helpful to look at this a little bit in the context of the surrounding area. As I mentioned, we are across from the Huntington Club. We're across Huntington Avenue from the Metro Rail Station. I think it's also important to look across the Beltway, and I appreciate that that's the city of Alexandria, but what you see over there is a lot of office development and a lot of mixed-use development that's proximate to the nomination property. If we go to the next slide. And not only do we have existing uses that surround this property, but there are certainly planned uses. And we just discussed the Huntington Metro Rail Station, land units E and F. And as was discussed in that plan nomination, that is proposed up to a 1.5 FAR, 360,000 square feet of office. And I apologize, that's office. I think that there might be an option for residential, but I think it is 360,000 square feet of office. There may be an error in my slide, and up to 1,500 dwelling units with an optional hotel. There's also across the street from us, the Huntington Club, and that was the subject of a comprehensive plan amendment that was approved that permits up to a 3.5 FAR with 80% residential, 20% office. There has been a rezoning application that has been filed. I know it has not gone to public hearing yet, but it is proposing a 3.23 FAR with over 1,800 residential units, 550,000 square feet of office, 130,000 square feet of hotel, and 42,400 square feet of retail and restaurants.
Lynn, can we stop you for just a second? Can we ask everybody to please mute? Everybody, please mute. We can't hear the presentation. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn.
Should I don't know if you were able to hear me on this particular slide. I think that what I was trying to convey is that
We did.
Great, existing uses, but planned uses, some of which were just discussed. And again, if we go to the next slide, I think it's helpful again to think about that in the context of where this property is located. Again, the surrounding uses of this property. So if we go to the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about the approved rezoning on this property for the Parker. It's about 6 acres zoned PRM. What is existing and what has been constructed is 390 residential units, 5 stories, about 75 feet. What is approved but not yet built, 15-story office building or 165 feet, and an 11-story hotel at 120 feet with 6,000 square feet of retail. So that is reflective of the development that has been constructed, but also approved for construction. So the next slide is going to show you what the property looks like today. And that is the approved and constructed Parker rental multifamily buildings. And then you have an interim park that's out front. That's what you see in the aerial. But if you go to the next slide, you'll see what is approved on this site is that hotel building and an office building that's there at the corner, both significantly taller than that approved residential building. And on the next slide, there is an option of all office. That was an alternative that was approved for all office development. So the proposed nomination on the next slide, what I'd like to discuss with you would be a residential option. And the question that you ask is, well, why would that be appropriate here? Why would the owner want to do that? Well, first off, this property has not been developed, and I think that everyone's very keenly aware that the office market has not been strong in Fairfax County. In fact, there have been a lot of office vacancies. And you take that combined with our recent circumstances of the COVID experience, and vacancy rates have not improved and have probably gotten a bit worse. And I think that as people are working from home, there's a real consideration that that may be a permanent solution for some. I agree with Mark Biani, who was speaking before me, that there always will be an opportunity for office building, but I think that many people will not return to a traditional work environment. The other factors for consideration is that we already have planned and probably coming soon, office development that's across Huntington Avenue. There's a lot of planned office at both the Huntington Club and at the Metro Rail site. At the Metro Rail site, there's plans for more, as was just discussed. You also have a lot of existing office that's competing on the other side of the Beltway. The nominator owns the property that's next to this, which is an office building. And he can personally attest to the fact that there's not a lot of demand for office, and there are plenty of alternatives in the area. And that's why we think that this would be an appropriate solution for this particular piece of property. And if you go to the next slide, that was a first floor kind of design. And this would be subsequent floors. We're talking about a proposed approximately 6-story building. It would be proximate to the metro. I think that Fairfax County has acknowledged a need for housing. And this type of housing would be, you know, what I would call affordable, market affordable housing. There is a need for this in Fairfax County. What you also see is a building that would have a much lower profile. We're talking about a 6-story building, an approximate height of 85 feet, approximately 210 units. This is compared to what's approved on this property, which is a 15-story office building, an 11-story hotel building, respectively. That would be 165 feet and 120 feet. So we do think that this is more in keeping with the existing Parker apartments that are there. We think it's more in keeping with the surrounding development. And we think it's also consistent with what is planned on the other side of Huntington Avenue as a part of Huntington Club, which is a residential building, 5 stories over a 2-story garage. That is the latest plan that I've seen. So we strongly believe that planning a residential option on this property would be more in keeping with existing and planned development. On the next slide, one thing I want to touch on briefly on the next slide is that the owner of the nomination property, which is along the front, 2550 Huntington Avenue, is also the owner of 2560 Huntington Avenue. And if I could offer a clarification, I apologize. The nominator does not own the existing Parker. That is under a separate ownership. What we're discussing is a change to the undeveloped portion, which is owned by my client. But what we are considering is that there might be some opportunities to work together with the adjacent property that is owned by Capital Investment Advisors at 2560 Huntington Avenue. It is planned for office with a residential option. And, we're thinking that maybe we make this a coordinated development. What this could potentially lead to is replacing that open space that's an interim use on that property with some open space at the rear of 2560. And I think that the reasons for that would be it would create some contiguous green space along Cameron Run. It would allow for a continuation of an existing trail that's located behind the Parker and that goes along Cameron Run. There'd be a potential for increasing the RPA buffer that might have water quality benefits and perhaps increased flood protection. So we think that there really are some opportunities for a coordinated development with a lot of benefits. So on the last slide, I just want to sum up by saying that we think that the residential option makes a lot of sense for the reasons that I've articulated. We're thinking that could be senior housing. It could also be, independent living or assisted living. We think that would add to the mix of uses in this area. And because there is some plan language that talks about a mix of uses, we could incorporate first floor retail. We think that might make sense, but we think that an approved large office building and hotel doesn't make a lot of sense on this property. And we'd like the opportunity to work with you all on some language in the comprehensive plan to see if we could do something better. So with that, I appreciate your time this evening, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Strobel. Questions from the committee?
Yeah, Tim, it's Len Pasco. If I could ask a question.
Yes, sir.
My question really is to the staff. As I looked at the background materials on this as it came in and went through it, this frankly looked like a no-brainer to me. It looked quite straightforward with all of the stuff that's going on around it. Alexandria right down the way, but with all that's going on at the Huntington Club and other areas. So I couldn't really understand what the staff's objection is, except that somehow it's love for the earlier plan. I'd like to hear a real justification for the staff being against it. I haven't heard it yet.
Yeah, thanks, Lynn. So there's a couple of factors that came to, be our recommendation and led us to recommending that this not be included. I think that the first thing is that the transit station area around Huntington has an area-wide recommendation of a mix of uses. And so as we're looking at not just this particular site, but also looking at, as Lynn was talking about, other sites that are kind of in play right now, we wanted to ensure that we're providing a mix of uses. The TSA's goals, area-wide goals, are being adhered to when you're looking at both the aggregate and then also looking at the site-specific recommendations. So in terms of the Huntington Club, that is a nomination to a rezoning that's going forward right now. It does have a mix of uses. The WMATA proposal that we just heard also has a mix of uses that are proposed. And so that mix of uses is not just important because we like mixed use, but it's important because it provides opportunities for reverse commuting. It also helps in a lot of ways for establishing kind of a character and a defining area in an urban environment with real feeling to it if you have that vibrancy and that mix of uses. The last thing I'll mention is that you have this particular site in the area that's planned now for the park, but as Lynn was discussing, is currently also has the plan for office and for the hotel. This is the area of that site that's located most proximate to the Metro Rail station. And so you have a lot of opportunities for the quickest walk, the most convenient walk from WMATA and the transit station to offices. So there's a lot of factors. I think that those are probably the main sticking points.
If I may just add, though, it seems to me, but maybe I'm wrong on this completely, but it does seem to me that when Mark was talking about, well, in 10 years, I'm going to tell you whether there's any space that anybody needs, office space and such, that made sense. I could understand that. But why would you now sort of demand office space or nothing? Because we know they're not going to build anything for another decade, if that's the case.
Well, I think regarding the market, I think that there will be, continued demand for office. I think that's what we've heard is that, we have some uncertainty in terms of COVID. We know that there are vacancies in the campus that are higher than we'd like them to be, but in terms of locations that are most proximate to transit, these are the kinds of areas where we really want to see development of office. It's the most convenient spot for riders, and it has a lot of aspects to it that provide a lot of the goals that the county is looking for in terms of urbanization.
This is Catherine. May I make a comment, please?
Sure. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I agree with Lynn, number one. I totally disagree with the staff. They're living in the 1990s, and it's a shame because there's an incredibly large amount of bright people there. And I just simply do not understand why they can't look toward the future. We have live workspaces that are being pushed like crazy in the area. That gives you office, if you will. And if you listen and read what Victor Hoskins, the head of the EDA, has been speaking about of late, is we have to do things. If you want economic development, you have to do it in conjunction with the region. And as Lynn Strobel mentioned, there is a walking bridge right across underneath the Beltway that takes you over to Eisenhower Avenue. Granted, it's the city of Alexandria, but it is loaded with office space over there. And a lot of it is empty. So why are we pushing a landowner to build something that is going to sit empty? Because the whole concept of big offices has changed. If you look at Tyson's, the big office structures have changed. The builders out there, the developers, the guys that owned all the big land and all the big offices are downsizing. Those things are being converted into residential. So shame on staff, love you all, but I think you've got a very short view of what needs doing. And the word flexibility has been used over and over and over again, certainly about the Mount Vernon Council, to say your plan language has to be flexible. You have to be able to move with the times and move with the times quickly. So I believe we should vote against the staff's recommendation to not put this in the work plan. And I believe it should be in the work plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine.
Could I, oh, go ahead, Ellen, I'll talk.
Yeah, let me just real quickly just kind of add on to what both Lynn Strobel and Catherine have just stated. And, you know, we keep talking about needing better housing. We need senior housing. We need maybe, you know, more affordable. Well, we definitely need more affordable housing and possible, you know, not assisted living, but, you know, step down from that. And, you know, I just think it's a shame to say, no, 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 the plan calls for office, you must have it, when office is now going away to we already have 1 million square feet in Fairfax County, the last I heard, that is unoccupied. And this is not only across the bridge from all of the office and shopping and theaters in Alexandria, but also, you know, people who are older and can't walk, go to the metro and take it to Eisenhower. It just seems to me that we need to take a look at options and allow owners of property to develop things that will actually work.
This is Gretchen. May I make a comment?
Yes, please, ma'am.
I want to know if the senior housing is a tease, because, well, I mean, we hear it often where, oh, you know, potential senior housing, and it never occurs.
I'll be happy to answer that question.
Okay.
It's not a tease. We actually were in conversations with a senior housing provider, and unfortunately had some discussions with the planning division, and, you know, became quickly apparent we would need to go through a plan amendment process. And so that did not go forward, but I know that there was interest, and I think that if we could get a plan amendment, that there would be interest again. So no, it was a real discussion. So I would offer that.
Okay, real discussion and enactment are two different things, but thank you for the clarification. Second item, the green space offering is a joke, because you see how much green space is currently there, and if you're replacing it with buildings and then you're adding buildings next to it, what you're offering is something that's already there. So it's not really offering much at all for green space.
Well, what I would say is that even though there's green space there now, it's an interim park. It's approved to be an office building and a hotel. It went through a zoning process. There's an approved development plan. So it's not taking away green space. It's an interim green space because it hasn't been built yet. And what we were talking about is that area kind of at the back, there is a trail that runs along the back of Cameron Run. We think that there are opportunities to make that, you know, a better place and to continue that trail. We've had discussions with Wetland Studies and Solutions. We think that there are opportunities to make that a nicer area. So we're serious about that.
Okay, I just think you need to incorporate a little bit more into that development if you're going to move forward.
Understood.
Okay, thank you.
So I have a question, comment. I think if you're going to do senior housing there, it's probably going to be luxury senior housing. And I know they've put in a little bit of that out at Tyson's, and people who live there do like being near the metro, but I would be very surprised if you could, you know, if that wasn't you know, it'd be pretty high priced senior housing, but I guess there's a market for some of that. Yeah, I also question the wetland. I'm surprised you got approved for a wetland back there. That does seem like a floodplain. I used to live around there and it's pretty damp. I also think there should be something near the metro that's accessible to people who are using the facility, whether it's retail, street level retail or mixed office retail, residential. I don't know if that's such a thing, but I think it's not good to just have blocks where there's no access right next to a metro.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, can I just make a couple comments? This is David.
Yes.
First, Graham, I just want to ask you, you're using this term reverse commuting in the context of transit-oriented development. What exactly are you talking about? What do you mean by that?
Sure. So this is a good question. So in terms of reverse commuting, I think the first thing you'll want to think is, you know, how does a normal person interact with the metro station, you know, if they're just commuting? So this is the end of the line of the yellow station. And so typically what you'd see is people either getting in their cars, driving to metro, or walking to metro, or biking, or however, but going to metro in the morning with the idea that they're going to then go off to Alexandria, into the district, Arlington, you know, but elsewhere for work. With reverse commuting, it's just the opposite. So instead, you're drawing people in from other locations, so Alexandria, other places along the metro system, and having them come to Huntington for work. So that's
okay.
That's reverse commute. The idea, the reason that that's ideal from a planning perspective is that it provides for additional activity during the day. You know, it's if everybody's leaving and leaving in the morning and getting to the metro station, they're not there during most of the day. But if you have a reverse commute situation where you have office, for example, and there's a critical mass of office, it's going to be able to support additional retail. You're going to have pedestrian activity. You're going to have people there during the day, and not just in the morning and at night.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks, and that helps. I also agree with all the other comments. I don't know why we would push for office space when we have so much idle office space right now in the county, and it's been that way for several years. I mean, I do think there is maybe some potential with Amazon in the Virginia Tech Innovation Campus that you might see some kind of follow-on consulting and other kind of groups developing sort of spill-off effects in the way of commercial, but that's really hard to predict. And there is a lot of office space on Eisenhower Avenue. It's sitting there and it's ready to go. So I agree with the other comments. I just don't see why we would push for office here. And I think residential makes a lot of sense.
And this is Catherine again. Just
Could I make a comment
real quick?
Catherine, let Holly get in for a
Sure,
second.
go ahead.
No, if Catherine wants to go first, that's fine. I'll be the final word.
Thank you, Holly. The only comment I'd like to, and I love it.
Surprise.
The only thing I'd like to say is I want to remind everybody that just down the road at North Gateway, where Huntington Avenue meets Richmond Highway and Fort Hunt Road, we, the county and EDA, have been working for years to get that entire site redeveloped with office, with retail, with residential, and with a hotel. And Victor Hoskins from EDA and the county deputy county executive is working very hard on that. They have been reaching out to different developers to have conversations. So the things the staff are asking for, which is the office component, is already built into that parcel of land. It is just a hair, a few feet outside the quarter-mile TDA. But people walk all the time. It's not like we used to be. People will walk from that part. So please don't forget there is going to be that commercial district, if you will. Thank you.
Thank you. Holly?
All right, thank you, Walter. So I just want to kind of express a note of caution about everything that we're talking about. There, you know, we're in the midst of a pandemic. We're seeing changes, but none of us know 6 months from now what's going to happen. There was a really interesting article in the Wall Street Journal a couple of weeks ago about office space, about how some of these companies are saying that they are actually looking at acquiring more office space to provide for social distancing, and that they want this space to get their teams back together so they can incorporate new members into their culture. So, you know, this is all at play, but I am concerned when we do these developments, when we do the zoning, like we talked about at Huntington Metro, which is a planned mixed use, or what Catherine's talking about at the Gateway, and like we did at the Parker, where we did different types of development. Now, it's always easiest to build the residential first because there's a big market for it. But if we approve a rezoning here on this parcel and allow it to go all residential, then we're setting a precedent. And if at some point in time when the North Gateway project comes into play and the residential component gets built first there, then, you know, 5 or 10 years later, they come back and say, hey, we've got to rezone the rest of this. We've got to change the zoning. Then we've set a precedent on how we deal with this. So I am concerned about that. And I know people talk about all the vacant office space in Fairfax County, but it is not in our area. That vacant office space is, you know, C and D and B office space. It's not Class A, and it's not transit-oriented office space like we have the opportunity to put in at Huntington Metro, and it's not on Richmond Highway. You know, it's just the office space that we have vacant is old, decrepit, ugly stuff that nobody wants to be in. We don't have good vacant office space. And I know, you know, some of you have expressed the thought that there's lots of office in Alexandria City, right across Cameron Run, which is true. Fairfax County, that we'd have about 30% of our property as commercial property, the rest is residential, because the commercial properties pay a higher property tax rate, and that helps keep the residential property taxes lower. So we've kind of always tried to keep this balance in the county, and we've seen it in some of the rezonings that have happened. Residential. And so we put these residential units in, and we have to provide services for them. We've got, you know, fire, all of this. Residential costs the county more. So there's all this. So I'm just trying to say, you know, we just need to be cautious about this, and we don't want to throw away opportunities. Large businesses that were on Huntington Avenue that moved over to Metro Park. Parker. And businesses want to be close to Metro. They want transit-oriented business opportunities. They're in Metro. And I think we just have to be aware of those things. I think I've talked enough. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Holly.
This is again Van Dam, Planning and Development. I'm sorry, I've had my hand raised for a little bit of time, and I thought I'd check, because what I wanted to say, if I may, was very similar to what Holly was saying. May I talk for just a moment?
Yes, please. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And hopefully you all can hear me. I think the trouble that we've been having with this nomination relates to what Holly has said, which is really the idea of the 100% switch over to residential. And I think it's very easy to go with the market right now, and to think that we can let's go forward with the residential or the senior housing. The challenge that we have, I think, is that office cannot exist in isolation. It really wants to be in a place where there is some type of critical mass of office. And we are trying to understand what that is in Huntington. But I think where we are is that if we start switching over, development over to office, I think that may be, potentially a snowball effect where, other folks and other developers who also have some type of office component in their development program may also wish to do the same. And I think it's premature for us to say at this site that office can be switched over to residential, because I think it may lead to what's going to happen at the Huntington Club and what's going to happen at North Gateway and what's going to happen at WMATA, is that if they see that there's an openness to switching over, then we may end up losing our office entirely. And I think that will severely hurt the attractiveness of this station, because we won't have that job and employment component. And I think that's very troublesome. And I think that this is could be emblematic of something that is a larger concern of other developers who are wishing to chase the market, and I think ultimately can do significant damage to the Huntington area as a whole. So I think we really do need to be careful about potentially opening a larger, I don't want to call it a floodgate, but a larger, I'll use the word precedent for the county's willingness and support for diminishing the amount of planned office and office potential in the area. So I would also express a note of caution. I think Holly, you did a good job of that, and there is the EDA study right now of the Richmond Highway corridor, and includes Huntington. We're trying to get information from that. So we are listening. Catherine, thank you very much. We love you too. So it is this, but this is a real challenge, and I think we're as staff very worried about thinking through this in a way that might end up causing a bigger problem in the long term.
Thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
And can we open it to the public now for public comments?
If there are any members of the public that wish to speak on this, please raise your hand. And if you're calling by phone, you can hit *3. And I'm not seeing any members that wish to speak.
Okay. Put it over to Mr. Co-Chairman.
Thank you, sir. So that concludes the current discussion of this particular nomination, and we're open for a preliminary consideration here. Is there a motion on the floor regarding this nomination to support it?
I would like to make a motion. I would like to make a motion to support it and put it in the comprehensive plan amendment.
This is Catherine. I second the motion.
Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, this is a motion for a preliminary consideration. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 All opposed?
I'm opposed.
Okay, what opposition?
I'm
Say again,
opposed.
please.
Tracy's opposed.
Hillary is opposed.
Evan's opposed.
Okay, so we have Evan, Hillary, Did I hear Holly?
Yes.
And who else? Tracy?
Mm-hmm.
So we have 4 in opposition and the rest in support, so the motion passes. I count that right?
Mary is opposed.
Who also opposed?
Mary,
Mary Payton?
yes.
Okay, so we have five opposed.
Hamid opposed?
Huh? Hamid, did you support or oppose?
I propose.
I supported it.
Okay, thank you.
He supported.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have 2, 3, 4. We have,
Any abstention?
yes, are there any abstentions?
We have 14 people, 4 opposed, and 10 is for.
So that's us.
I'm voting favor.
Okay, all right. The, that's 10 minutes. So the motion passes. Motion to support passes.
How many do you have favor?
So we have 10 in favor and 4
Yeah,
opposed.
4 opposed.
Okay.
Once again, this is a preliminary vote. And further discussion can ensue, and for, a final vote will occur at the final meeting.
Thank you for your consideration, Ted. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, moving on to our next nomination. We
I'm
have,
going to make sure I have it right, though. We support that it is in the plan, correct?
We support having it considered for the work plan, yes.
Okay, thank you.
This is Megan again. Do you think we could just do a quick roll call? I wasn't sure. I don't know. I wasn't sure, Tim and Walter, if you were voting on this, just to make sure we have our numbers right.
Yes, we did.
yes, I voted in favor of the motion.
Those voting in favor, just to make sure I've got it here, are Catherine, Gretchen, David, Evan, Queenie, Ellen.
I thought Evan was a no.
That's
Evan,
correct.
no, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I voted no.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm bad handwriting. That was a no.
That's okay.
So scratch that.
This is Aaron. It would be helpful to take the vote as a roll call. So just go one by one and have them tell you how they're voting.
Let me do that. I mean, it appears 9 to 5, but let's go ahead and make sure we've got it correct.
This is David, Mr. Chairman. Can I just ask that you state the motion that we're voting for or against, and then let's do the roll call.
The motion is to support consideration of this nomination for the work plan.
Okay.
And we had a second. And let me run down the list. So Commissioner Clark.
Yes.
Yes. Commissioner Sargent. Yes. Hillary Clausen.
No.
No. Catherine Ward.
Yes.
Got it. Gretchen Walsh.
Yes.
All right. David Levine.
Yes.
All right. Holly Doherty. Holly.
No.
Okay, Evan Kaufman?
No.
Okay. Mary Payton?
No.
All right. Queenie Cox?
Yes.
All righty. Ellen Young?
Yes.
All right. Hamid Manir?
Yes.
Okay. Lynn Pasco?
Yes.
Okay. And Tracy Wood?
No.
Okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 yes, and 1, 2, 3, 4 no's. Oh, 5, well, 5 no's, excuse me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 no's. 9 yes, 9 in favor, 5 opposed. The motion passes, and that is for consideration, preliminary vote for consideration of this nomination for the work plan. All right, thank you, everybody.
All right, thanks, everyone. Can we now move on to the next nomination, the Ingleside Trailer Park?
Please.
And I'm pulling the presentation up right now. All right. So this is our last nomination for the evening. This is MV002, which concerns the property located in the 8400 and 8500 block of Richmond Highway, as well as some specific properties on Greenleaf Street, Denfield Drive, Mellon Street, Galen Street, and Forest Place. This nomination is located in the Mount Vernon Supervisor District as indicated on this map. So the subject area is located in the Richmond Highway corridor area and is planned within a suburban neighborhood area, or SNA, between the South County Center and Woodlawn Community Business Center. The SNA is an area that's predominantly planned for residential uses, with some limited commercial, community serving retail uses and redevelopment where appropriate. It's recommended to be of a compatible type, use, and intensity with the neighboring properties. The western half of the site is developed with 2 mobile home communities, Ingleside Trailer Park and Ray's Mobile Home Colony, as well as small-scale retail uses. The eastern half is developed with retail uses and a house of worship. So the nearby properties along the Richmond Highway are also located within the same suburban neighborhood area and are planned and developed with primarily residential uses, small-scale retail and commercial businesses, and open spaces. The adjacent area to the northeast of the subject site along the same side of Richmond Highway, it's the southeast side, is planned for office and or retail use at a 0.35 FAR, with building heights up to 40 feet in total height, and it's developed with the Potomac Square Shopping Center. The adjacent area to the southwest along the same side of Richmond Highway is planned for residential uses at 5 to 8 dwelling units to the acre, with an option for retail and or office uses up to a 0.35 FAR, and is developed with the Washington Square apartments and townhouses. Across the Richmond Highway, east of Fry Road, is planned for residential use at 16 to 20 dwelling units to the acre, with an option for mixed-use development at a 0.5 FAR with parcel consolidation. And this is developed with the Woodlawn Garden Apartments. The area to the west of Fry Road is developed with townhouses and an option for residential at approximately 13 acres, 13 dwelling units to the acre. The area directly to the south is outside of the south of the site, that is outside of the Richmond Highway corridor plan area, and is developed and planned for low density residential uses at 2 to 3 dwelling units to the acre. So that's the area along Gateshead Road in that neighborhood. So the comprehensive plan notes that the subject area is recommendation area number 3 in the SNA between the South County and Woodlawn CBCs. And the base plan recommendation for the site is for residential use at a density of 5 to 8 dwelling units per acre. The adopted plan also contains an option for mixed use comprising 75% residential at 16 to 20 dwelling units to the acre, and 25% retail and office use at an intensity of 0.5 FAR. This included with this option is conditions related to substantial parcel consolidation and an urban or town center design concept, among other conditions. So the nomination proposes to revise the mixed use option, that is the option for the site, to 20 to 30 dwelling units to the acre, with neighborhood retail and or office use comprising 5 to 10% of the total gross square footage, and without parcel consolidation as a recommended condition. So in considering this nomination, staff notes that the need for affordable housing and proximity to transit, cites the need for affordable housing and proximity to transit to justify the proposed density. The proposed 20 to 30 dwelling units to the acre would be the highest density in the SNA, and only a portion of the site is located within a half-mile radius from the planned bus rapid transit station, which is located to the northeast at the county center. And this is shown in the red circle that's in the eastern portion of this site in this map right here. The half mile is considered kind of the maximum optimal distance for encouraging ridership and supporting increased density. The nomination also proposes to eliminate the parcel consolidation language from the adopted plan text, and this leaves less assurance that the proposed increase in density would lead to a site design that is compatible with and could effectively transition to surrounding uses and provide adequate space for supportive residential amenities. Corridor-wide recommendations encourage logical and sufficient parcel consolidation to ensure adequate site circulation, buffering, and reduced impacts on residential properties that are adjacent related to the height and building mass of new development. And it also ensures that unconsolidated parcels can develop in conformance with the plan. At the same time, however, the comprehensive plan notes that determining acceptable locations for higher density is going to be necessary as a part of a strategy for providing more affordable units. So countywide policy also supports the retention of mobile home parks as an important source of market affordable housing, with specific plan recommendations that include redevelopment for those parks. The plan notes that it should not negatively affect surrounding properties. Moreover, in such instances, accommodations for the mobile home park residents and tenants should be made on site, at adjacent sites, or through substantial relocation assistance. Mary, this is one of the things that you were mentioning earlier. Just wanted to touch on this, but if you have additional questions about it, we can certainly talk about them. With redevelopment of mobile home park, property owners and developers are encouraged to develop a relocation assistance plan. These plans are intended to minimize displacement, and when it occurs, though, the plans are intended to provide park tenants with assistance and to help them move. If there's monetary assistance that can be provided to help support the cost of moving, translation services, helping to secure vacant units, referrals, transportation assistance, those are kinds of things that are recommended in those relocation plans. The Department of Housing and Community Development has developed guidelines and has adopted guidelines specifically for dealing with relocation in these instances. And so they review the plans that are submitted from the developers as they redevelop and come forward with zoning action. So given these considerations, staff is recommending that this be scheduled for the Comprehensive Plan Amendment Work Program with some specific considerations for replacing the existing affordable residential units on site on a redevelopment on a one-to-one basis. Furthermore, staff only recommends the consideration of a higher density option with either full or nearly full consolidation of the land unit in order to ensure a logical planning area for future redevelopments and to provide sufficient acreage for supporting that one-to-one replacement of existing market affordable units. And we do not support, as a result, the consideration of removing the adopted plan guidance on consolidation, which is a corridor-wide recommendation. So I'll leave it at that. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. I believe that the nominator does have a presentation as well.
All right. Thank you, Grant. Is there a presentation from the nominator?
Yes, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
This is Lori Greenleaf with McGuire Woods. And with me tonight is Joe Franconi, the nominator. Grant, the presentation.
Yeah, just one.
Thank you all for being flexible and to discuss these nominations.
I apologize, my computer's running a bit slow. I think it's getting overheated. Too much good discussion.
This is Gretchen. I would ask everyone, if you're not speaking, to please mute yourselves.
Working on that. Let me say that, so the sub area we're discussing, as staff has explained, is sub area 3, suburban neighborhood area between South County Center and Woodburn CBCs. The properties have considerable frontage along Richmond Highway. Oh, great. Next slide then. The properties have considerable frontage along Richmond Highway, as you can see on the slide, but also extends down in a fairly wide area and abuts the residential neighborhood to the south. The properties are located, as staff explained, approximately part of the property a half a mile from the potential South County Center BRT and a mile from the potential Woodlawn BRT. They are currently planned for residential use at 5 to 8, with an option of going to 16 to 20 with conditions. The majority of the property is currently zoned C8 with a very small amount zoned R2. And this is one of those situations in the county where the zoning of the property potentially allows a greater density than the comprehensive plan base. And as is often the case in these circumstances, this does not provide enough incentive for revitalization and for implementing even the current comprehensive plan. Next slide. Our nomination suggests that increasing the residential density option by one density level from 16 to 20 to 20 to 30 will allow the creation of the kind of quality amenity areas, open space network, walkability, and general good design that's desired all up and down the Richmond Highway corridor, and will incentivize the property to redevelop. As you all have seen in this nomination process, it's helpful to have a concept of how the proposed plan nomination could be implemented. This is a very preliminary concept. It shows a mix of 2/2 units and a couple mid-rise multifamily buildings, which could have ground floor retail, as well as approximately 57,000 square feet of inline retail and office. The multifamily buildings and retail could be placed up on Richmond Highway, and the density would taper as you move towards the residential neighborhoods to the south. And the thought is to create an enhanced buffer over that which exists today between those residences to the south and the commercial uses. Linear parks, open space areas could be located along that southern border. Staff has recommended that this nomination move forward, and we are happy to work with staff and the task force in the process on the affordable and the consolidation comments in their recommendation. It is certainly our intent, if this plan amendment were to proceed and move forward, our thought is that future rezoning would be held to the same local ordinance, state regulations, and policy recommendations as far as affordable housing. And we certainly share staff's goal of providing the right transitions to the neighborhoods and adequate circulation in order to have a successful development. And we think that can be accomplished without complete or almost complete, which was the wording, consolidation of this very large sub area. Often in rezoning applications, we're able to show that a partial consolidation, while still being substantial, would not hinder the ability of the remainder of the area to develop in accordance with the plan, and that is often satisfactory. But again, we want to work with staff and the task force on that. We think that the sub area deserves a deeper look, and respectfully request that it be put on the work program so we can continue to work with staff and the task force. Otherwise, Joe, Joe Franconi and I are happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Greenleaf. Commissioner Sargent has a question.
Laura, I just had one question I wanted to clarify with Graham. The one stipulation within his comments, and Graham, if you could help me too, you had a specific stipulation, and I wanted to see if the applicant or the nominator agrees with that. Could you repeat your specific point on this particular site?
Sure. So we have two in particular. The first one is, you have residents there currently that are located that live in the mobile home parks. And so our first consideration was to have a one-for-one replacement of those existing market affordable units in the development that you see. The second one is regarding parcel consolidation. So the Embark corridor plan has language in it that encourages consolidation of parcels to ensure that you have logical areas for redevelopment. It also ensures that areas that would otherwise not be consolidated can conform to the plan when they come in eventually for redevelopment. So it's the idea that you have sufficient acreage on the site to be able to support not only the one-for-one replacement, but also the additional development and the additional units that are on the site within that proposed density range. So the idea being that if you have full or nearly full consolidation of this area, which is the land unit recommendation area number 3, that would be able to support the one-for-one replacement of those existing units in this development at that density range.
Okay, thank you, Graham. And Lori, I brought that up so that when we have an eventual vote after discussion, wanted to make sure if there were differences of opinion with the nominator or if you were on the same page with staff comments on that. So if you want to clarify that now or wait till the end, that's fine either way. Hang on just a second.
Mr. Commissioners, thank you, Mr. Commissioner Clark. This is Joe Franconi. I want to thank you all for your time, members of the task force as well. We are anxious to try to get this forward and would rather discuss as we move forward the availability that we would have to create affordable units on the property along the guidelines provided with the guidelines in the existing ordinances. If these specific numbers have to be met throughout this process, if this is something we can go through and try to justify, we don't need to address them now. If we can vet this out through the rest of the process, we would try to settle on an agreeable number. But the reality of a one-to-one replacement in this, even with this density, with the total number of units that we are, a one-to-one replacement would put it at approximately 20% of the units. And I mean, at this point, that's not really feasible. I think we can go through, we can show you a good plan. If you get us into the work program, we can show you a good plan. We can come up with something that'll appease everybody. As far as the other issue of the substantial consolidation or the majority consolidation, I think the property aligns itself logistically with a center access point, a full motion intersection coming in off of Fry Road, which is almost the dividing line of the property that we have under control, and with our neighbor. We have spoken with the neighbor that owns the majority of the parcel. He has not come in at this time. He's aware of what we're doing. He is not opposed. He's aware of this meeting tonight. He's elected not to attend. And we are 100% confident that we can accommodate a phased development of this project without the whole thing going at one time. The reality of challenges of trying to develop a 25-acre site of this magnitude, you're talking about a 5 to 10 year build out anyway.
And Mr. Franconi, you're speaking the other owner being the best way?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But in terms of meeting the affordability requirement, you're saying the current comp plan today, which is 14%, is you feel that you can meet that, but 20% you're saying right now is out of the...
Right. The one-to-one, I think, I mean, I haven't done the metrics. Again, we just got the benefit of this staff report on Friday of last week, I believe, either Thursday or Friday. We're running initial numbers, but I think we can definitely meet the ordinance now. I think, if we're saying that we're agreeing to a 1-to-1 tonight, I want to go through the work program is what I'm saying and give us a chance to vet it out.
Mr. Franco, just part of the reason for my question, just to clarify between staff's recommendations and further comments. So I appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
And I have a quick question for staff. So staff is planning to provide relocation assistance to the owners within the mobile home park. And so trying to figure out what that actually look like in terms of folks that own their mobile home. And although we're looking at monetary assistance, but will we also look to find a place for them to physically place their mobile home? Or will that be up to the mobile home owner?
Yeah, thanks for that. So just to clarify, so the relocation assistance plans, those are provided during the planning stages and in the zoning stages by the developers. So the county, in the Department of Housing and Community Development in particular, they review these and they've developed guidelines that the board has adopted for what these relocation plans should entail. But the actual plan is provided by the developers and property owners of mobile home communities. So we would, as part of any land use application or as any planning study, that would be something that the county would be requested asking for with the land use application.
So then I would ask that question, I guess, to Mr. Francone right now. Would the assistance be to help the folks that actually own their mobile home, to help them find a place to move their physical mobile home to another mobile home park, or?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Trying to understand that a little bit.
This is Joe Francone again. So very early on in this process, it was over a year and a half ago, we were thinking about trying to bring this in as an out-of-turn comp plan, and we had initial meetings with the supervisor's office and with Fairfax County Housing and Community Development. We went in, they provided us some guidance for a relocation program, but basically the relocation programs that they have authored to date are specifically for affordable or low-income housing, not trailer parks. So we understand that there will be some relocation. We have a very responsible owner, a manager, a steward of this trailer park who's owned it for years, who has relationships, and we will follow guidance and or any state statutes that apply to this.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else on the committee?
Yes, I would like to speak to that. There's a community there of about 120 homeowners that I've been in touch with on projects, and they apparently don't know about this plan. At least that's what they're telling us. And I think it's really important to hear their voices and hear what they think about this. I've also looked into a lot of mobile home rules and laws, and they're very, very weak. People would, I'm pretty sure, be in danger of losing their investment. They would not be able to sell their mobile homes. They own these homes, but there's really no place else to move them in Fairfax County. They'd have to go, way far south in Richmond to find another location. And the older homes are not very mobile, so may not make the trip. Most mobile home owners, when their park is redeveloped, they are very much in danger of losing their whole investment that they've made into their mobile home. It's a very unfair situation. I think we need to listen to some of the people, and some are here, as I understand it, to talk about what they think would be a fair issue. They are interested in moving into small apartments all over the county. That's, they like living in a mobile home. I know they don't own the land, but they do own the mobile homes, and they are a community of homeowners. So I think it's very important to hear their voices. if you want to listen to them first. I know some of the other, I went to the Lee District meeting last night, and they allow the public to speak first, and then the task force members deliberate. I don't know if you would be willing to do that or not.
This is Catherine. Can I make a statement? Back in 2009, and Mary, I agree with you here. Back in 2009, when there was a discussion of changing the plan, there was a large outcry by the folks that live in both these trailer parks. Both the county, the landowners, everybody failed to sit down and really talk to them. So there was a large meeting. They all came. When I say all, there was a large number of the folks that lived down there, and it was explained to them what was going on and why it was going on, what was being recommended. And then, of course, nothing ever happened. The plan changed, but nothing got sold. So I agree with Mary. I think there's a need for discussion with these folks that live down that way, as it is with all communities down on the highway when something's taking place. And it's absolutely critical that we have Spanish speakers when you do this, because a lot of these folks, when they came in 2009, did not speak English. There was no translator made available to them at that time. So I would encourage you all to do that.
Yes, this is Joe Franconi. I'd like to address that again. So, Catherine, as you just so eloquently put, there was a large community outreach in 2009. People got up in arms, got worried, came to you. The plan changed and nothing happened. Exactly that. Our idea all along will be that there will be a fair relocation, again, in compliance with Fairfax County Housing and Early Development and state statutes to relocate these people. Instead of us going there now and getting a bunch of tenants up in arms with the possibility of they may be moving, they may have to look for other places to go now, when something in the best case scenario, if this goes through, is still 3 years away. And we don't know what the eventual outcome of this process is going to be. So, I got the old cart before the horse idea in my head here. And again, we are very familiar with community outreach, from the projects we've done in the past. We will get the community. We went to Mount Vernon Council with this. And again, we will do the community outreach at the proper time. And if you want us to address that while we're in the work program, then so be it. We can agree to that now. Thank you.
This is Ellen. Can I say just something real quick?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and I'll just add on to what both Mary and Catherine have said, that it is, these people own their homes and some of them won't be able to find a place to put them. But even worse than that, we have to remember that when people move into a mobile home park, they buy the mobile home, which is kind of like a car loan. So if they have no place to put it, they still have to pay on it. So it's worse than just they own it and they lose their investment. It could bankrupt people. And I just think we need to maybe pay attention to that, to have a plan for what we're going to do for these people.
Mr. Chairman, could I make a comment?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All of us, I think, are devoted to improving the quality of life and the appearance of Richmond Highway. And so we can't totally get into a can't change anything mood. And I understand and I agree with all of the statements about the difficulties, but we've got to find ways to make these work if we are going to improve the corridor. And that's one of the big aims that we've been pushing on. And I think we need to bring both sides of it together and make sure that it works rather than wringing our hands about the difficulties. Thank you.
Could I add to that? And I know this is going to get a little late in the conversation, but one of the pieces of language, and either Joe or his representative commented on this, your justification, if I got the wording right, talked about using building compact neighborhoods within this 25-acre parcel. And my question applied to, are you speaking about pocket communities as defined by Ross Chapman, who is the premier in developing pocket neighborhoods? And if you are, I don't know how many trailer homes are in these two Ray's and Jamie Turner's parcels. But if there is a way, as Lynn says, to help everybody, can we not redesign this where you have a pocket neighborhood that is of the trailer parks or the trailer homes that is more upgraded, has some amenities with it, and then you take the rest of the stuff and bring it into some other pocket neighborhood-like developments with maybe some taller spaces for more residential, et cetera, et cetera.
Catherine, I'm going to take that. The pocket neighborhood concept is I'm not 100% familiar with, and in fact, it's very vague. I think what the pocket of that is included in the scope of in the context of this is this being the pocket neighborhood within as an infill pocket. So the idea, you know, what you see, everything you see on this plan is vertical, 4-story and more, with the exception of the retail on the north end up there. I think the idea of any portion of the property being low slung and maintained for trailers is probably not feasible and is not going to be able to spur the redevelopment of this site.
Okay, I appreciate that. What I'll do, Joe, is I will send you Ross's book. You should read it. And the county staff has always talked about maybe trying to develop some pocket neighborhoods, which are infill, but they're infill in a different kind of way. So I'll send it to you if I might, and I hope you look at it. But you know, we're a one Fairfax. We are a equity system, and if y'all will remember years and years ago when Kings Highway and Kings Crossing was going to get developed, everything hit the fan when Epps Trailer Park, everybody was told they had to get out, and it was just ridiculous what happened. So I think there's a way to get there from here, but
yeah, lots more to talk about and a lot to consider for our neighbors there.
Mr. Chairman, Mr.
Yes.
Chairman, are we ready for a motion?
Actually, could I, Mr. Chairman, I have one more question if I could. This is David. I just want to, just two points. The county may not have experience with relocation and right of return for residents of mobile homes, but they certainly VHCA does.
Hey, David,
Yeah.
let me interrupt you for a second. Can everybody please put their mics on mute?
Okay, thank you, Tim.
All right, go ahead.
I just want to offer some guidance.
Once again, everybody, please put your microphones on mute while David's talking. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks. I just want to offer guidance that VHDA, which is now known as Virginia Housing, has very good rules around relocation and rights of return for residents who are displaced by developments. And so on their LIHTC funded deals, they demand that these plans are in place. And I'm sure they have them for mobile homes in Virginia. I'm sure that that's happened. Now, we actually have an example of one university where there was a relocation plan for Robinson Square when that was developed with a right to return at an affordable rental price back to the new development. So I just want to offer that out, that I'm sure there's a lot of guidance and a lot of good rules around how that gets done.
Yeah.
The other
David,
thing I want to, if I could just add one other thing, Mr. Franconi, have you talked to the owners of Washington Square regarding having them join you on this nomination? Because in talking about consolidation, that would be ideal to actually include that in this redevelopment, because that would also get you access to the public parks down there, Mount Vernon Manor Park. Have you had conversations? Are they looking at anything of this sort in terms of an amendment? Do you know?
No, we have had no conversations. be happy to reach out to them. I think we're probably late in the process to be able to try to annex additional property into it. I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay.
I just want to clarify something. In the One University project, affordable county affordable housing is being torn down for One University, and that's why they had the right of return. That would not apply in this case. This is market rate affordable. If you follow the new rules when they come out on percentages of affordable and workforce housing, it would be like 8% of the total. And that is not going to accommodate very many of the 120 people who are being asked to leave. So I think there really needs to be some more discussions and negotiations, telling people, trying to keep something secret from people just so they won't get upset, and then springing it on them is not a very equal process. It doesn't respect their needs. I think we need to speak with the tenants, the owners of these homes, openly and realistically, and really try to understand their issues, which are severe, and work this out. And some are here now. We must not take a vote until we hear from the public.
And that is Gretchen, that was my point to Mary as well, is that we need to be hearing from the public now before we make any kind of vote.
That's correct. So, Graham, do we have comments? Anyone raising a hand?
We did previously. I think we have a couple of members of the public that are on the call. And so, Teneria, you are unmuted. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes. State your name. If you can state your name and address, please.
My name is Leah Tenorio. I'm Director of Hispanic Ministry of Good Shepherd Catholic Church. You need my home address?
No,
we're fine.
No, that's fine, but can everyone please put their mics on mute, please?
I don't know if you have a camera that you can see us here, but I'm here with 12 residents from the 2 trailer parks.
We don't see you just yet.
Leah, I just made you a panelist, so you can turn your webcam on. That should work.
Can you see now?
Not yet.
Well, it's where?
Not sure. I didn't get the name of it.
So Leah, there's a button right next to the mute button that'll say start or stop my video. And so that should be able to toggle on your webcam.
Stuff? Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
There they are.
Hello.
So,
thank you all for joining us tonight.
In the description of the process of the plan amendment process, it states that you seek public input on the proposals to change. And so you want input from people who live, work, recreate, and otherwise use the sites to help the task force to determine if they should be added to the comprehensive plan. Additionally, in the comprehensive plan, in the 2017 edition, Objective 3 that talks about retaining suburban neighborhood, Policy E states to facilitate the retention of existing mobile home parks. I just want to make that statement there before we start. And then these residents were not notified, and they're just learning about this proposal. We started meeting today at 5:15, and there were 10 others here, but they couldn't fit in this room, which is the room I had to use because of social distancing. Although now you can see we're all together here, but we only have 12 of them participate tonight. And many of these here have been living in the trailer park for 2, 3, 5, 8, 2 for 10, 2 for 14, and 1 for 20 years, which is a lifetime. The 109 trailers are not just individuals, they're families. And the families have, they estimate over 200 children that live in these parks. Many of them are children with special needs. There are seniors that also live there, grandparents, and that there needs to be more discussion with these residents in consideration of all that you've already discussed with One Fairfax, in light of One Fairfax and the commitment to equity. The quality of life isn't just for the other people that live in the Route 1 area, the residences, the residential neighborhoods to the south, the other people. It's also for these people that are part of our community. And they want you to know that they consider the trailer parks as their community, their homes. It's not just a trailer. They said these are their homes where they've invested money. They've bought them, invested money, and their children go to school here. And they have children in elementary school and middle schools and high schools. And we also learned that there's a new task force on the preservation of affordable housing. And we think it's important that we propose that it would be just and right to wait for the new task force to issue guidelines, not only to have time to be able to discuss with the residents, but for that task force to look at. We know that mobile homes are now considered a part of affordable housing. So we have a few who do speak English, mostly speak Spanish, but there are some who'd like to say some words.
Hello. Yes, my name is Sen, and I'm concerned about this because I didn't know about this. I just like going to the highway, so I'm kind of shocked right now because it just hit me right now. It's like It's like kind of nervous about this notice because I don't have another way to go because I bought the trailer. It's not just a trailer. It's a house where I just got married and I'm building my family in there, and also I have a son. And now with this notice, and I had to move or I had to leave the place, I'm gonna have a lot of problems in my home. It's not just me. It's not just me. Everybody around in the area is gonna have a lot of problems, especially with this COVID-19. It's more harder. The thing's more slow. So this is my version.
Gracias. El próximo.
Mucho gusto, mi nombre es Daniela. Mucho gusto, mi nombre es Daniela. Nosotros le estamos pidiendo la consideración como personas que vivimos en Virginia por nuestros hijos, porque es nuestro hogar, es el hogar de nuestros hijos, donde han nacido nuestros hijos. Es el único patrimonio que le podemos ofrecer a nuestros hijos nacidos aquí. Tomen en consideración que aquí hay personas de la tercera edad, hay niños especiales, la mayoría estamos hablando de más de 120 familias. Entonces, ¿cómo quedaríamos nosotros como familias, como nuestros hijos nacidos aquí? Estamos pidiendo su consideración. Estamos pidiendo la consideración.
I don't know if any of you speak Spanish to be able to understand everything that she said, but she's speaking passionately about the need for her family to have a place that they can count on. The investment that they've made is something that they've done to invest for their children who have been born in this country and have their hopes for them in their future.
Thank you.
Leah, this is Graham Owen. I just wanted to mention that a part of our process, we do allow and provide at the county translation services. So we can, if she wants to send us any written comments as well as doing the verbal comments that we're receiving, we can have those translated so that the task force can.
Pueden escribir su comentario y ellos pueden traducirlo para repartir entre todo el comité. ¿Quieres decir en inglés?
Buenas noches, mi nombre es Delia Romero y vivo en en ese lugar, en el Enfield Drive. Y pues yo soy afectada más que nada en la, bueno, en la comunidad y en la ampliación de esa carretera que se va a hacer. La línea cruza exactamente lo que es a mitad de mi casa. Entonces estoy a la mitad para construcción y mitad para la construcción. Y bueno, yo tengo ahí ya más de 20 años y que así como yo, habemos muchas personas que también son afectadas y tienen más de 25 años viviendo ahí. Somos familias enteras completas, con nuestros padres, nuestros hermanos, con nuestros hijos, personas de la tercera edad. Entonces hay mucho, se puede decir, preocupación entre la misma comunidad por este proyecto que traen. Ojalá y tuvieran consideración en, pues, que son muchas las familias que a dónde se van a ir, se van a desunir. Va a haber una desunión muy grande. Gracias, eso es todo lo que quería compartir.
Gracias, thank you.
Gracias.
This is, could I ask one question of Leah?
Yes.
Leah, I for one would appreciate if you could gather their the test people and get it to county staff so that the task force can read what they personally have to say. I caught little bits, but it's not enough like Italian, so I didn't catch much. So if you would do that, I would like to see it, and I'm guessing others would too.
Yes.
Thank you.
I shall.
Leah, and you have others that want to speak?
¿Hay alguien más que quiere hablar?
So Leah, can we also, or staff, or get your contact information or Graham, do you have that already? Leah's contact info?
I don't. I was just going to, in the chat function, Leah, I was going to send you my email address so that you can forward any of the correspondence to us and we can then distribute it to the task force.
Okay.
Okay. And do we have comments from other comments from the public?
Leah, this is Gretchen. I'm going to parrot what Ellen was saying. We would very much like to hear what the comments are from your community or from the community there.
Mm-hmm.
And if you could put that together for us, we really would appreciate it.
Okay, I shall, and much of it is the concern about the families that live there and also the one-for-one replacement. I heard Mr. Franconi saying that it would not be feasible to do that, and that, you know, that he's sure he could figure out something that would be okay for everyone. And I don't know if these people would agree that it would be fair for everyone if they couldn't do a one-for-one replacement. And in the past, when I was working with helping residents at the public meetings for Embark, and brought many of the residents from Audubon and from Harmony Place to the public meetings, and there was some discussion about removing trailers from Harmony Place. It ended up that it was very difficult, and there were many barriers to doing any of the one-for-one replacement for the trailers that were almost, they almost had to be moved from the Harmony Place. So I think that there needs to be more study about that.
This is I have a question, and thank you very much, Leah, for bringing your friends to speak with us. This is for the chairman of our task force. Since there's a lot of issues coming up, is there a way to defer a decision on this particular nomination so we can wrap our heads around it and maybe get some meetings together with folks to look at some other options that could potentially be offered up?
Catherine, I
that
think
might
you're looking at,
accommodate. Pardon?
I think you're looking at Tim and my notes.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Well, then
we're on
I'd
the
like
same
to make
page.
I'd like to make a nomination that we defer this particular vote.
This is Gretchen. I second that one.
If we could clarify, defer the vote until when? The final, when?
Well, I don't know, guys, because you're the ones who keep telling us that we're running up, well, staff is that we're running up against a deadline and we still have to look at the one that got deferred from Bellevue. And so I don't know. I mean, I would want to hear from you guys. We can.
Let me question for Graham, if I could. This is Commissioner Sargent. Graham, can we? I'm anticipating a motion to defer a recommendation on this particular nomination. At least, and what we've been doing with the nominations tonight are taking a preliminary vote, you know, to move forward or not. So I'm anticipating that we can indeed take, you know, defer a preliminary vote or a motion at this time until perhaps the end of the task force process.
You can do that. I mean, this is what was done with the Bellevue Shopping Center at the first meeting, where a vote was deferred, provide the nominator with additional time to put together a resubmittal, I guess you could say. In terms of the time frame, we have the meeting on the 15th of September. That's our final scheduled meeting, and the reason, as I mentioned earlier, is that's the kind of the last week that we would have in order to be able to produce a staff report for the planning commission hearings that are later in the fall. That being said, with the Bellevue Shopping Center nomination, we'd asked David Gill, the nominator, to come back to staff and to the task force with his resubmittal this Friday, the 15th. That was the goal. There was to be able to provide us as staff with enough time to revise our staff report if there was a resubmittal that changed our recommendation, but also to be able to provide the public and the task force, you know, on the 14th with the resubmittal, so they could review it, you know, a month in advance of that meeting. So there's not a lot of time. If a staff report if the summary staff report that we've provided to you today is going to be reviewed in time for the 15th. Alternatively, if you prefer to just have additional time, staff might not be able to produce a staff report for the task force ahead of the final meeting, but we could provide our final staff report to the planning commission at those hearings in December.
I would think at the very least, we're not looking at a new staff report. We're looking at perhaps an addendum, if anything, or updated, because I think you've provided the detail, unlike the other nomination, you provided already the detail. I don't think there's argument here. It's just additional information and perhaps an addendum for consideration. Is that fair?
I guess it depends. Yeah, it's certainly fair. I guess it just depends on the that's going to be requested. We can turn around things as quickly as we can, and if the nominator can provide additional information from their end, I think what we would ask is for perhaps a specific date that information be provided to the task force and to the public, so that we can provide it in advance of the 15th. So,
what would your recommended date be?
Friday. But
I think, Graham, more importantly, the task force, we also would like to see the comments, the community there, the folks in that room, have comments that we all.
I'm being facetious just about Friday, obviously, but we do want to receive those comments. If we do need to translate them, there's a time lag there of. And so we would need to have the comments in if we're going to translate them in advance of the 15th.
What law is?
I'm sorry, hang on, just point of order, hang on just a second. Leah, if you could put your speaker on mute for just a minute so we can make sure we're communicating with staff and Graham for just a second. So Graham, could you go back and say, what was your time frame again? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear it all.
Sure. In order to receive the public comments, if we're going to need to translate them on the county side, We would need them a week in advance of the meeting so that the task force so that we could have them translated and so that we could provide them to the task force in advance of the meeting. Ideally,
So backing up from the 15th, what would that be?
so that would be at the 8th of September.
By September 8th, all right.
Graham, excuse me, Graham, does that include, I think it's important for us to give enough time for the task force to review them too. Does that week include both translation and publication? The translation takes a week, right?
Translation takes a week, so
maybe 2 weeks.
Back an additional.
Yeah, so maybe 2 weeks so that you all can have a week or so to review them.
That's a good point. So maybe September the 1st, then provide us with enough time to translate everything and provide it to the task force a week in advance so that they can read them.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
Since we have extended this, I'm assuming there would be, Graham, since I think Leah, if you could, I think if we're and now this is not a member of the task force. Leah, I think if we could consider getting the comments in, by September 1st so that staff has time to translate, that would be helpful. And secondly, I think this gives time to further research the issues that have come up, in particular the staff's comments regarding the issue of consolidation or one for one, and give the applicant some time to refine that too. Does that sound fair for comment?
Yes. Yeah.
May I please make a comment? Mount Vernon District, as you know, has a Latino outreach individual. I just saw a note flash through that Christine, they can have them help translate this. And there's several people in our community that translate for this community all the time. So I don't know that we have to wait for county staff, if you will, in that context to get in their queue. I think there's lots of people that can help with this to speed it along. But the question I have is, what law, policy, or rule says that the county staff is stuck with getting this stuff put together by December so it can go to the planning commission? Where does it say we can't slip the planning commission date a little bit and the BOS date a little bit?
So can I jump in here, Graham? This is me again. There's no, Catherine, there's no rule about that, but we have 3 districts that we're managing. So we were trying to package them all together so the planning commission could review them together. If this slips, I think you begin to lose the benefit of reviewing this among all the other nominations. So if everything else went ahead of this, those might take priority over something like this if this is getting supported by the task force and by staff and by the planning commission, and there may not be enough capacity on the work program to then review it. So I think that's sort of the thinking of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
No problem. Curious. Thank you.
Tim, could I make a comment? It's Lynn Pasco. I wonder if as part of this work, we couldn't do something on these numbers about one for one, or whether it's a question of height of buildings. I mean, it seems like to me when you're talking numbers, you should be able to talk something creatively enough to get down to something which satisfies both sides. And, rather than say, this is the hard thing on this side. And I was going to ask Mr. Franconi the question, and he answered in the very first thing. What percentage is it? Some way, we need some negotiation there to see that something satisfactory could be worked out. That would go a long way to helping things, I would think.
Len, I think one to your point, a couple of comments. One, I think certainly additional information can be available. 2, I think we have to remember what our role is here, and it's to decide or recommend whether or not this should go forward to the county work plan. So this is step 1. We're only at step 1 before getting into too much detail, too much scrutiny. And I think that's important for also the folks who've testified to understand. This is a process by which we look at potential plan amendments without a final vote on a particular nominated parcel. So this would go for a further consideration by county staff if it were to go forward through this process, which is tentatively scheduled to end in September. If it were to go forward, it would still be part of the county work plan review process before it came forward for further public consideration. So at this point, what we are doing is determining whether or not this should go forward for staff to provide further detailed consideration. This is not an adoption process of any kind of nomination. It's to determine whether there should be further scrutiny and study. So please keep that in mind. And to Lynn, your point, I think certainly, while I may not agree with the term negotiation, I think certainly further information is useful here.
It just seems to me, since this is going to be a major issue, that it'd be worthwhile to let us know as part of this further information process whether or not there's room there to work this out. That's all.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Sergeant, Commissioner Sergeant, Mr. Pasco, thank you. This is Joe Franconi again. So I appreciate your comments, and Commissioner Sergeant, I want to further your comment that this is a very preliminary process here. There is an existing comp plan that was done that does not make any of these considerations for any kind of replacement beyond a typical percentage of ADUs per the ordinance. So while we are open to negotiate, the owner has no plan to actually develop this property anytime in the future. We all know the process. Comp plan amendment, rezoning, plan approval in Fairfax County is anywhere from 36 to 40 months, unfortunately, at this process. Another shovel in the ground. So what we're talking here is 48 to 5 years away, 48 months to 5 years away. We have these residents down there who are residents of Mr. Turner's trailer park, who he does have a relationship with, that now I think through whatever process we've gone through here tonight, I think that the majority of these people are now concerned that they're going to be out of a home tomorrow or in the next day or in the very near term. So while I respect everything that's been said, what we're asking is give us the opportunity to move forward into the work program, and let's work these details out there. And then even after that, there's still going to be a rezoning to deal with, where it's going to get addressed again. And all of this is way far down the road from where we're talking about tonight. So what I'm asking, and I understand if we have to defer and we go back and we can come back in, and I don't want to use the word negotiate because I understood Mr. Commissioner didn't like that word, but we go through this process all the time. At this early of a stage, to bring these residents in and get these people up in arms when there is no immediate plan to do anything with this. And furthermore than that, there is an existing comp plan that doesn't make any provisions for ADU beyond the ordinance. So let's agree to get this, let's move it forward and give us the opportunity. I'm sure that we can make it work. We have a very good track record in this area. The supervisor's office is familiar with us. Commissioner Clark is familiar with us. Commissioner Sargent is familiar with us. Give us the opportunity to move the thing forward.
I have a real problem voting on something where the staff recommendation is so far away from what the owner is saying he's willing to do. He says he's willing to follow the rules, and the rules are not clear and they're not adequate for a situation like this. I'm going to move that we try to separate this from the rest of the package and take a little more time with it, and see if we can't hear the residents a little more clearly and think of some kind of a staff proposal that the owner would actually agree to have some possibility of it happening.
Well, Mary,
we already have.
We can go back. Point of order, just a second. I think we had an original motion.
Yes, we do.
From Catherine. And Catherine, could you repeat that, please?
Yes, the motion was, and it was seconded, I think, by Ellen. I'm not certain. The motion was to defer any decision to take a preliminary vote on the recommendation as written until, we decided to delay it a week. We can hear from the citizens and what they have to say. And I do believe that we can help them understand the process so they don't get, as Mr. Franconi mentioned, very scared about their homes and things of that sort. So the proposal is still out there. Vote now to delay.
Right, and I'm just
Delay
adding, if we don't feel like we can adequately get the information and discuss that, it wouldn't be, that we could delay it beyond the September 14th. We could separate this off and let it come along a little later, or have staff hurry it up a little bit towards the end. I can tell you, I'm a professional editor, and people are always dumping things on me at the last minute to get done the deadline. So I know that happens to people all the time.
Catherine, would you accept a friendly amendment to set, so we can set a timeline here that staff can work with? A motion to defer.
Absolutely. Whatever the date.
A motion to consider, a motion to defer consideration until September 15th. Does that work?
It works for me if it works for everybody else.
Does that work?
Yes.
Graham, does that work for staff?
Yeah, that works, of course.
All right, that gives time to get any other information in, get the testimony in. That gives time for further discussion, from this process, and still keeps it alive, still keeps the nomination going, but allows us all to get a little some additional detail and the comments from those who have testified this evening. And I think to Mr. Franconi's point, also we can get some clarification too. I think you make a valid point about existing comp plan language and where we go from here versus what we have on the books versus what's being considered through this process. I hope that sounds fair to everybody. So as the friendly amendment would have, the motion is to defer consideration of this nomination until September 15th. Is there a second?
This is Gretchen. It's a second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Hearing no opposition, the motion passes. I want to thank everybody who came this evening for this particular nomination. I appreciate everybody's patience with it. I know it's difficult, but to Mr. Franconi's point, it gives us a chance to clarify that this is not something that happens right away. For staff, it gives a chance to provide some additional detail, and we appreciate them allowing that to move forward that way. And for the task force, that gives them a chance to get further consideration and deliberation of this a challenging issue. I appreciate it. So,
Thank you to the community for coming out.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. The last item on the agenda for this evening is the Beacon Hill Apartments. We were going to hear from staff on update of what they're doing over the Lee District.
And if Aaron Clyburn is still on the call, Aaron, we're gonna make you the presenter.
Okay.
We'll try to keep this very brief because I know that it's getting kind of late.
Sure. Okay. Subject site is located east of South Kings Highway and west of the Target Shopping Center and Beacon Center along Richmond Highway on the eastern side of the Lee District. And, okay, hold on. Okay.
Aaron, click on the icons. Yeah, there you go.
The approximately 37-acre subject site consists of the Beacon Hill Apartments complex which is developed with over 700 low-rise multifamily residential units and is bordered by Lenclaire Park and single-family detached homes to the south and southwest, single-family detached homes to the north and northwest, and a cemetery across South Kings Highway further to the northwest. The majority of the site is located within a half-mile of the planned BRT station at Beacon Hill Road and Richmond Highway and is proximate to a potential Metro Rail station.
Aaron, I'm so sorry. Can you flip to slideshow mode?
I can try. Okay, but now I don't think I can advance it.
Okay.
No, I can't advance it if I'm in. Sorry, I'm gonna have to go back. Okay, the site is planned for and developed at a density of 16 to 20 dwelling units per acre and is designated suburban neighborhood on the comprehensive plan's concept for future development. Suburban neighborhoods contain a broad mix of residential densities and are planned for little to no change in land use. Infill development is recommended to be of a compatible use type and intensity with the surrounding areas. Immediately to the east of the subject site, Land Unit A in the Beacon Groveton Community Business Center is planned as a town center for the Richmond Highway corridor with a maximum of 3,500 dwelling units and 720,000 square feet of non-residential development. Additional development is envisioned under an option associated with the extension of the Yellow Line Metro Rail and an additional transportation analysis. The plan recommends that the greatest building heights and scale in the CBC should be concentrated near the BRT station and taper down toward the surrounding neighborhoods to effectively transition development intensity and limit adverse impacts on the character and stability of those adjacent neighborhoods. And building heights up to 6 stories are recommended at the edge of the CBC that adjoins the subject site. The existing 3- and 4-story multifamily buildings on the subject site serve as part of the transition to the lower density neighborhoods to the west and south. The nomination.
Aaron, I'm sorry. I'm going to pull up a larger image on mine just so that people can see it a little bit better. So hold on one second. You can still present, but I'm going to just try to make it look a little bit bigger so that people can see it because I think it's kind of hard to read. Is that better?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. The nomination proposes to increase residential development potential on the site by a factor of 4 to a total of 2,746 units and to expand the Beacon Groveton CBC boundary, citing a need to provide additional residents to support the planned commercial uses in the CBC, create additional housing options, and extend the grid of streets from the CBC. The proposed concept for the nomination includes building heights up to 7 stories across the majority of the site, tapering down to 3 stories along the boundary adjacent to single-family homes to the west, and it suggests utilizing the abutting Lenclaire Park as a buffer area to the south. Next slide. PC 19-LE-001 is not recommended to be added to the work program. Development of the subject site at the proposed intensity that approach those planned within the CBC prior to the implementation of the adopted plan for the CBC may undermine the location of the highest intensity development in closest proximity to the planned BRT station and does not provide adequate transitions between the higher density development in the CBC and the single-family neighborhoods to the west. Furthermore, the proposal would result in potential for greater building heights than those recommended in the adjacent portions of the CBC and would likely present challenges to accommodating adequate on-site amenities such as recreational open space, buffering, and screening to the adjacent neighborhoods, which are all central objectives of the adopted plans for development in the CBC. And just to let you know, the lead task force last night voted not to add this to the work program.
Okay, interesting. Thank you. Any comments from task force?
Yeah, I'm curious just about something or other. When I read the papers on this before, one of the things that bothered me, it sounded a little bit like the staff was taking a not invented here theory at it, that, you know, we have our precious CBCs and we don't want anybody changes or messing with them because this is going to overload this or do something to that. What am I missing? I mean, you know, maybe the whole idea is not a good one, but saying it doesn't, the way it abuts to the CBC is not good. I didn't get. I just didn't understand it at all.
Aaron, do you want to take that one? Aaron, can you hear us?
Sorry, I had my mute button on. Sorry about that. So the subject site right now is located in a suburban neighborhood that is planned for little to no change. And what they're asking for to do this is to extend the boundary of the CBC so that they can do this. And what we're saying is that, and the Embark plan, which was adopted just back in 2018, has not even been implemented yet. And so what we're worried about if this were to be implemented, constructed, is that again, and as you've already heard tonight in some of the other presentations, we want the highest densities and intensities to be right at transit stations so that they can take advantage of the ridership to be created from that. But this is further away than that. This is not even in, it's not even in the CBC, and it's not neat, and it's more than a half a mile or, you know, from the planned BRT station. So we're saying it's premature, I guess, at this point.
Well, I'd like to make a comment, and Lynn, to speak to that. I mean, they want to be something that they're not, number one. But number two, this property abuts several detached and townhouse home communities, and this kind of density would be really terrible and very negatively impact their value. Just saying.
Okay. All right. Thank you, staff, for briefing us on that. And any other business for the good of the group tonight? Again, I want to thank everyone and appreciate you putting up with the technical difficulties in the beginning and a little longer than we would want to go tonight, but we appreciate everyone hanging in there and look forward to doing it again in a couple of weeks. But more efficiently, though.
Make a motion that we adjourn.
Thank
Do
you,
I hear a
Walter.
motion to adjourn?
Second.
Yes, we have a motion to adjourn.
I second.
All in favor?
Everybody.
All right.
Wait a minute.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right.
Here.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.